Good evening then, everybody, and a welcome to all of you, and a particular welcome to Parry Bath, Emma Pilgrim, Iram Gulzar, Pete Bavistock, Richard Bissett, Louise Griffin and Chris Trail. Have I left out anybody that's not a member of the committee? Thank you very much, all of you, for coming. Yeah? Right, and just before we begin, two things to remind you of. First, a reminder to the officers that you remember that we will all have read all of the reports. So if you want to introduce them, then please can you just very briefly pick out the main points. And for everybody, please can you keep your videos and your mute buttons off unless you're speaking. And if you want to speak, please raise your hand. Abdul, as you're on the telephone, if you want to speak, just put on your mute button and your audio, and then I'll know that you want to speak, and I'll call you when your turn comes. Is there anybody else that doesn't have a hand raise button?
Thank you, Pauline.
Everybody else has. Super. So if we have to have a vote, then I'll ask you to raise your hands with the hand button, other than Abdul if he's not then arrived, in which case he can do it verbally. Right, first of all then, apologies for absence, Neil.
Just to confirm that Claire Lawrence is here as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, Claire. Didn't mean to leave
No worries, Chairman, not at all.
Welcome.
Apologies, Jenny Cheng and Sarah Kerr. And
Right.
Prue Gray is here as a substitute for Sarah Kerr.
Right, thank you very much indeed, Glenn Prue, for coming along instead. Right, minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any matters arising that can be discussed other than the things that can't be changed? Andrew, what did you want to raise?
Sorry, Chair, I think that Neil was suggesting that they should perhaps be raised later in the agenda.
Okay, if they're to do with that report, then yes, indeed.
Yeah, but if someone could give me a prompt at the appropriate time, that would be great. Thank you.
Righto, thank you. Is everybody in favour of those minutes as a correct record? If you're against, can you put your hand up? Otherwise, I'll take silence to be consent. Guy, you're against?
No, I'm in favour. Sorry, I misheard what you said.
Okay, just quicker this way and it's not controversial. Right then, thank you very much. The minutes are agreed. Are there any public questions, Neil?
None received, Chairman.
And no member ones?
Correct, no member questions either.
So let's move straight then to item 54.
Can I just say declarations of interest?
Yep. Oh, sorry, I forgot them. Are there any declarations of interest? Yeah. Righto then. Item 54, grass cutting. Is it Emma that's going to introduce this briefly?
Yes, if that's all right.
Yes, carry on then, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman, members and colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to attend today so we can discuss the grounds maintenance contract. As you'll have seen from the report, I've given an overview of how the past year has been and outlined the preparations in place for next year as well. Obviously, this year with COVID-19 and lockdown restrictions coming into place around the start of grass cutting season, there have understandably been some challenges. So we've worked through this period with Tivoli to make sure that our larger parks and open spaces were always prioritised during this time to make sure there was that amenity green space available for the residents. So looking on to next year in 2021, some of our focuses include having a clear recruitment timeline for training as well, making sure our machinery is in good working condition with contingency in place that's robust to get vehicles back up on the road, and continuing the weekly updates for members and parishes as well on the grass cutting progress. So I'd be really pleased to hear any feedback you have or take any questions on that. Thank you.
Well, certainly I appreciate being kept in touch as to when things are happening. Andrew.
Yes, thank you, Emma, to you and your team and to everybody at Tivoli, okay, for a really good report and a good year. I've got just two questions, though, if I may. On page 16, it's mentioned that recruitment of staff can be competitive. Now, that must have been aggravated by the pandemic, and both challenges, that it's competitive, you know, even in the best of times, and then the pandemic could well continue into the next cutting season. Were there any particular periods of time last season when there were staff shortages? Were there any lessons learned last year regarding recruitment and impacts of the pandemic that will lead to new preparations and practices next season beyond those mentioned on page 17? And then the second question also relates to page 17, referring to the mitigation measures put in place to help cope with weather conditions. Could you please provide even just one or two examples of such measures that were used last year and any new ones that might be used in the next season? Thank you very much.
Right, I'll try and go through those point by point. Thank you. So in terms of challenges with recruitment, I think that's always going to be the nature of the industry can be a bit problematic, as you probably understand. And some of the problems we had this year is we were starting the grass cutting just as lockdown approached, so there was a lot of uncertainty as to what they were able to do, what they weren't able to do, how they were going to arrange that in terms of crew members using the same vehicles and things like that as well. So there were up to 4 members of staff furloughed at some points, and that kind of reduced over the course of the summer as well. So Tivoli introduced more overtime to try and catch up within the extra hours to try and get back those days. And I think us focusing on those larger open spaces which we knew that needed to be accessible and open for the public. Some of our verges and things like that did get a bit longer. So I think it was kind of weighing up that resource and making sure it was focused where it needed to be. In terms of lessons learned, I think we know that we need to make sure it's a lot more robust in terms of having staff in place and ready before that March period. And I've been speaking with Tivoli, so we're hoping to get a really clear picture in January what the recruitment's going to be like, what the positions are going to be, so we're all prepared. In addition to that, they've got new relationships with recruitment agencies to get agency staff in if needed. So I think it'll always be a challenge and a bit unpredictable, but I think as long as we've got those things in place to help mitigate any problems, hopefully we'll be in the best position that we can be. And then, what point have I missed? Sorry.
It was about mitigation measures to help cope with weather conditions. Just one or two examples, if possible. Thanks.
I think with weather, it's one of those unpredictable things. So what we want to do is make sure that we're communicating with people as much as possible. If there are any problems with weather, if we're not able to get onto the ground as soon as possible, we need to be communicating that with residents and yourselves. In terms of having machinery so we can get overtime perhaps earlier in a focused area, so we can make sure we get that cut done and round through if we're unable to start earlier. I think that's the main thing, so we can get overtime in place when we know it's going to potentially be an issue, as well as drawing on our colleagues in countryside some of the time if we need an additional tractor, which can help us with those larger open spaces, which we will continue to want to prioritise for the public so they can enjoy it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Paul. Paul Fishwick.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Emma, for your introduction. Yes, the 2020 grass cutting season, it did fall behind due to COVID, as you mentioned. It was also helped, I think, also by a very dry May, and that stopped the grass growing as quickly as it normally does. But then the grass started to grow quite wildly during June and July when it became wet and warm. And we started to receive complaints in Winnersh, and myself and my fellow ward councillors, Prue and Rochelle, we assured people via Facebook that the grass cutting crew were on their way the following week, and that was helped by your weekly updates, which you sent through. So it was a pretty close run thing during June and July, because it could have got particularly bad, especially if May had been wet and warm, which it wasn't. But I mentioned the helpful weekly updates. They were a bit sporadic during 2020, and we were having to chase them up through officers. Could you assure us that they are actually going to be sent through on a weekly basis during 2021?
Emma?
Yeah, that's something I can work on. It's just been myself that's sending those updates out, so I think maybe I need to make sure they've got measures in place if I'm unable to do that, so you know exactly when to expect it. So I'll make sure that's in place, and when I send the first one for the year, I'll probably do a bit of an introduction so you know what to expect, if that sounds reasonable.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable, because it's very, very useful for somebody can post them on Facebook to say, yeah, they're starting next week, or they're part way through the programme in the particular area. It's very, very helpful for people to know. Thank you.
Thank you, that's really good feedback.
Thanks, Paul. Prue?
Oops. Thank you. I think you've partly answered what I want to raise. It's at the bottom on page 16, where you talk about helping Tivoli with the promotion and retention of staff. So you've described a bit about temporary staff and keeping staff. Can you talk about that in a bit more detail about how you've helped them?
So some of the things that we've done is predominantly to help promote some of their advertisements. So they put up full positions. So we've worked with our Optilist teams as well as some of the tenancy forums as well, because I think it's quite helpful to promote those, particularly if we can get local residents who we know live in the borough to work for our borough. It's always a positive thing. So I think that's the main thing, but always working with them, and if we've got any opportunities in terms of our other contracts in place, I think having them all in the same depot is really helpful as well, so we can keep an eye on them all and make sure that they're working cohesively together as well.
And do you think it's got better this year, that side of it, than it was before?
I think to an extent there's always going to be room for improvement, and we do need to make sure that we've got a fully robust system, and I'm always going to be hot on the recruitment, making sure that we've got that resource, because that's the key thing to help us deliver the contract.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Guy?
Pauline, I apologise, I was late. I didn't get home from work till late, so I do apologise.
That's all right. No problem. You're here.
Yeah. Hello, Emma. Sorry, I was just making sure that my cat wasn't about to destroy something. Thank you for the presentation. I think it's very useful. Part of my questions have already been asked and answered. It's around the recruitment and retention aspect, because one aspect that, one moment. One aspect that is always true in unusual financial circumstances that we find ourselves in is that when there is job losses and then applications for new roles and things like that, generally the retention aspect of careers is significantly more challenging when we have a shortage of workers, because there's high levels of employment. With potential unemployment rising going forward, to what aspect is there going to be further consideration, not only for the retention of the existing staff, but also for the recruitment of new staff, considering I believe there was some cases up in the Midlands where they had about, for 5 job postings, something like 4,000 applications. So is that an area that we are giving support to Tivoli to as well?
I don't think we haven't necessarily been giving them support in relation to filling out their candidates, because I do understand, like you said, they have received a number of applications, and sometimes they're just not necessarily qualified people. So it's about getting the right people in, as you say, getting the retention in as well. So one of the things that Tivoli are hoping that will assist with that is using the Kickstart program, which they're trying to get up and running in January, which will help bring in some fresh blood, some younger people, and introduce them into the industry, which we're hoping to give them an incentive to stick around and become more established members of the team. But the nature of the industry and retention doesn't always go hand in hand. I think we'll tend to have half of the contractors, people who've been there working for many, many years since they were in their teens. And then the seasonal staff who will just come for the summer and not hang around. So I think it's about keeping that balance, but having the Kickstart in place as well will be really key. And I'm going to be pushing that and keeping an eye on how that progresses to get some fresh people in and see how Tivoli are going to retain that. So I need to work a bit more to find out, and I can update you guys as that progresses.
That'll be very interesting to learn about that, because it is a hot topic of conversation at the moment. But yeah, my other questions have been asked, Pauline, so thanks very much.
Thank you. Jim.
Thank you, Pauline. Emma, could you just pass on my thanks to the team as well, because my inbox has not been full with complaints this year of grass cutting. So a very, very good measure of how well you've done this year. So thank you for that. One question that has been asked, just wonder whether you could just provide some guidance on, is after the grass cutting, sometimes the pavements are left with the residue or whatever they're called, the cuttings across the paths. Is that something we can do to make it look a little bit more tidy after we've finished, or is that not part of the contract?
So thank you for the compliment. So I will pass that on. In terms of after they've cut, they tend to be working in a team of 3. So you'll have one chap who's litter picking, one who's trimming or on the ride-on mower, and then you should have someone following behind with a blower. They all kind of go at different speeds, so it can take 24 hours for the blower to come round and blow it off the pavements and from obstacles. So that should be happening, but if it doesn't, please do let us know so we can pick that up with the necessary crew.
I think it was probably an isolated case where the pavement was left covered. Perhaps the blower man had a day off. but thank you anyway for the service this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Alison.
Good evening, Emma. Just to follow on from Guy's question, are there any apprenticeships offered to young people starting in the job? Because I think that's going to help the retention of workers, isn't it? And we are very keen to offer more apprenticeships within the borough.
Yes, that's something that we've been trying to progress with them. But from what I can tell, it depends on, I think they have to meet certain criteria for the apprenticeship. So it might be that if they took an apprentice on, they might have to work across our contract as well as another one. So I'm not sure of the logistics of that and the kind of demand from that. But it's something that I have pushed, and there definitely is a value in apprenticeship, like you say. So I'll find out more information, but I'm thinking it might be that for our contract it might not be suitable, but I can find out a bit more and feed that back to you if you like.
Yeah, because I thought that we did have a council policy that contractors employing over a certain minimum of employees must be offering apprenticeships. Because I know we've often had apprenticeships within our building projects. So I would be pleased to hear back. Sorry, Pauline.
Yeah, I was going to say perhaps Emma could investigate that and get back to you.
I can take that away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I've got one question which is slightly related. What areas are they deliberately not to cut, but which we leave for wildflowers?
So we've got a number of areas that we've got designated as meadow or long grass. So they're predominantly in our larger public open spaces. Cantley Park is one where we've got predominantly long grass in the parkland. And I think it's definitely something we want to introduce more across the whole of the borough. But at the moment, most of the areas that we're looking at have been kind of led by residents proactively getting in contact with us, because there's always going to be a tricky balance to get it right, making sure we've got that amenity value green space as well as promoting the biodiversity. So it's definitely something I want to increase in terms of meadow areas as well as grassland, because we want to do our bit to improve biodiversity, and it also offers an opportunity for carbon capture as well. So I can see if I can provide you with some more specific sites where I know that we've got set up, if that would be of interest.
I would be extremely interested to know that. And just so that residents don't think they've been deliberately neglected, is it possible to put all that information on our website so that people know where those areas are?
I can look at the logistics of that. Most of the areas that we've got on the ground at the moment, if they're not quite large, substantial, obvious places, we have got little signs up to say the purpose of those areas. But it's something I'd like to formalise, really.
Yeah, have a thought about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
My final question is actually to Parry. Parry, are you content with the challenges, that they are the correct ones, and are you happy that they will be addressed?
Thank you, Chair. I'm absolutely confident and positive about the challenges ahead. The team has been working absolutely fantastically well. We are on top in terms of communication with the contractors to manage all the challenges. It may be staffing, it may be machinery, but yeah, I'm very confident that the team is doing very, very well. And I want to congratulate the team as well at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions? Right, in that case, thank you very much indeed, Emma. Oh, Alison's got a hand up? No.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Parry, are we confident that it is simple and straightforward for our residents who do want to make a complaint? I know Jim mentioned that we're getting far less in our councillor inboxes about grass cutting. Do you feel confident that we've now got a very easy to access online form for people to make comments if they're not satisfied?
Is that to Parry or to Emma?
Well, to Parry, but he might like to pass it to Emma.
Okay.
It certainly, thanks, Alison, that excellent question, but we have to get the comms right in terms of, and Emma has been doing very well in putting out the weekly comms out so that people, particularly members, can advise their residents to see if what's happening is actually real, and so we are working very, very hard on the comms side to make sure that the word gets out if we are running into any challenges or difficulties.
Okay, anything to add, Emma?
I would just say we don't have a designated form for grass cutting, unfortunately, at the moment, but it's something that I'm looking into. At the moment, any reports about overgrown grass would come through as either the customer delivery team as a phone call or an email through, so it would be picked up that way and then fed into our dynamic system. So that's how it's currently sitting. But there would be value in having it as an easy form. I can see the value in that.
Emma, is it part of the the Warwick Borough Council app where residents can report all sorts of other issues? Is that a place that residents can report grass cutting issues?
I think they'd only be able to report it as a general contact us rather than a report it function like you can with problems with the road, because they're slightly different systems that feed into it, is my understanding.
Because clearly it would be best if we just had one place to go where you logged on to your council app to tell us about any issue with the council. Oh well, perhaps we can work towards that one day. Thank you very much, Emma. And as other councillors have added, you're doing a great job. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Let's now move to the recommendation then, which says the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee consider and note the report for the grass cutting programme undertaken by the council's contractor Tivoli. It's a little bit bland, but is there anybody against that recommendation? Or any abstentions? In which case we agree that, and thank you again, Emma, for coming to the meeting.
Thank you.
Let us now move to item 55 on food waste, which is Iram Gulzar. Over to you, Iram.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So Rochelle has her hand up.
Yes. Do you want to make any presentation, or are you happy to go straight to questions?
No, quickly, I will talk about the information I have included in the report already. So food waste, as we have seen, it was a success story since the rollout. We since last year, when by the end last year, we were able to achieve all our targets, all the benchmarks. I wouldn't go into much the detail of all of them. So the most important that I would talk about was achieving 50% recycling target. So, which was not only statutory, but it was also at the heart of our climate emergency agenda. So our recycling rate was 50.29 by the end last year. There were really good indirect impact on other parts of the services as well. And there is a table that I included on page 26, and that will give further details. This year, as Emma mentioned, that our performance and as well as the tonnages were really influenced by the impact of COVID-19. So we have seen a 39% increase in the tonnages as compared to the same period last year, which was really positive for food waste. And we also faced challenges at the same time. So one of the major challenges for us was the closure of our outlets. As we all know that majority of our receptacles for waste and recycling, they are all available through the outlets. So the availability of those receptacles really made our participation plans that we had at the time of setting out the service, food waste collection service, that we will increase the participation rate to 50%. And that actually we were unable to pursue those plans. Because promoting any service for food, for all the waste, it depends on the availability of the receptacles as well. The other challenge came from the closure of the recycling centers. And the recycling centers, when they closed, there were a lot of pressure on our contractor Veolia. So our main priority was to maintain 100% collection service at the curbside. And that also didn't let us pursue our plans to increase the participation level in food waste. We have now temporary measures in place, especially in this second lockdown. We have got a few outlets open, including some libraries and our Shooten office and some of the local stores. And we have tried our best to locate them or find somewhere where they're geographically sporadic, so it is easier for our residents to get hold of their receptacles. Where it was not possible, we have got temporary measure in place with the ABC cars, and they deliver to the borough. So they call our customer services, and then we collect their order, and that's passed on to ABC cars, and then delivery is made. So that is what is currently happening. We have also achieved more than 3,000 tons, which equates to 500 tons per month, and it stands at 1.68 kg per property, and which is much higher than our per kg per property per week at the time of set out, which was 1.46 kg, which is really considerable achievement. We are working on comms plan, depending on what the guidelines will be from the national government. And once we find out that after 2nd December, what will happen, and in the new year, so our comms plan will be dictated accordingly, and we will increase the participation rate as much as we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Rochelle, then.
Okay. How did you said the pandemic is affecting this? Do you think the fact that our food recycling and our recycling is greater because more people are working from home, so therefore they have a place to put the food waste? And or do you think also that all of our Amazon deliveries and other company deliveries in paper boxes and cardboard boxes has increased the recycling? And do you believe that they will continue to happen if and when the pandemic is finally no longer a pandemic, at least according to the government after Easter?
So the food waste, as I mentioned that this in the report, that we are aware that at the back of this high tonnage is the factor of COVID-19. And I have mentioned that there could be factors that people have started relying on the fresh meals instead of takeaways. And another factor was that the closure of pubs and restaurants. So that increased our tonnages as well. About the cardboard, that will go into the dry recycling, so that has increased as well. So we will try our best to maintain these tonnages by promoting our services and by educating our residents. So we are continuously and very regularly being in touch with them through our social media, and I keep informing them of our stats so that they are aware that what a brilliant job they have done. So hopefully, post-pandemic, we will expect this trend to continue through the communication and engagement.
How much increase in waste have we found in the parks now? Because since it's the only place people can go, and considering I walk through Dinton on a regular basis with my dog, I've seen more picnics than I've ever seen there, especially during the week. Has that been a problem as far as that goes? In other words, increased in non-recycling because there's no recycling available in the parks? And can we actually increase recycling by having recycling bins in the parks as well?
Recycling on the go or recycling in the park, that has been a really sensitive, or maybe I would say really problematic kind of area. So all those local authorities where the recycling on the go is available, that is, to be honest, that is really contaminated, because there is no clear kind of like, you can't really police residents everywhere or public everywhere. So whatever recycling is collected from the recycling on the go, that is majority is contaminated and unfortunately doesn't really offer any value. So we have trial in a couple of places, but that is under the supervision of these town councils in Elmsfield, and I don't know that what's the quality. Don't have much information about the littering or the recycling on the go with the town council, but I can find out that what their results are. But that is only very limited, only a couple of recycling.
I know that's what I'm trying to say, is that could we get more recycling possibly, and encourage people to use the recycling bins as opposed to throwing it into the waste. I can probably get you the answers about that because the leader of the town council is upstairs in another meeting right here.
If it comes to the curbside recycling, then definitely, as I said, our comms is actually sending the information out, and especially our encyclopedia app from RV3, that is really a big help. And wherever there is problem, we send letters as quickly as possible from our end. So that is the first kind of like first-hand education from our end. But as I said, that recycling on the go is slightly different to the curbside recycling. So in curbside, you know which household has got problem and you can speak with them directly. But recycling on the go is when they are educated at the curbside, then they can reflect their behavior on the recycling on the go as well. So
thank you very much.
That will be kind of like indirect impact.
Thank you. Guy?
You might need to excuse some background noise here. Thank you. I think the report was very good. basically, my question is regarding to the COVID aspect of it and the increased amount of food waste recycling that we are actually seeing. Because I believe I saw a report that we'd increased up to something like 1.65 kilograms per household in Q1. Has that increase basically been maintained so far into Q2 of the year? Do you have that information to hand?
Yes, I do have this information, and up until the data I've got is until the end of October this year. And up until October, we could manage to maintain 1.68 kg per property per week.
So it's actually increased from
Yeah, it is. And we, the first 2 weeks of November also suggest that there were 19 tons increase, and that is basically because of the pumpkin effect after Halloween. We haven't received full data for November yet. That usually arrives after, that will be in December. But that was the rough kind of data that I've got from RV3, 19% increase in first 2 weeks of November.
Okay, and I know that we had in the report there was aspects of about the caddy bags for the internal caddies. Unfortunately, I can't find the exact reference in the report. In regards to, have you received reports from the communications team with inbound queries as to is there any is there demand for people who are beginning to run out of the sacks? Because I know I'm running low, but I've got enough to probably see me through until January, February time. Has there been increased demand asking for the additional sacks as well? And is it in line with what you were expecting?
Yes, it is certainly in line with what we are expecting. In the first lockdown, as it was not really very planned, so everything was in lockdown, and we stopped all deliveries and everything. So all the outlets, as I just mentioned in my presentation, that majority of our waste receptacles are available through the outlets. So caddy liners, we didn't really give priority to that because there are alternatives available for caddy liners. So we encourage residents to use any kind of plastic bags, whether that is bread bags or cereal bags and normal carrier bags, so they can use it. Now in the second lockdown, it was more planned. So we have got these some of the outlets open, as I just mentioned, some of the libraries, our shoot and office, as well as some local stores. So we have provided all these outlets with the stocks. So these are available, as well as these outlets. We also do deliveries through ABC cars, which is our temporary measure. So these are available. If you are somewhere closer to one of the outlets, you can pick that from there. Otherwise, you can give us a call and ABC cars will deliver. But as I said, our priority for ABC cars is where geographically it is not possible for our residents to collect the liners themselves any other receptacle.
That's completely fine, because that way it's effectively allowing those that can't get out to basically make a phone call and get liners delivered, as it were. So that's very good to hear. It would be nice to actually get the list of the locations, as it were. I know it's gone out before, but we've had so many emails since that original one came out. It'd be good to send it again. And one final question is in regards to, and this might be a very difficult one for you to answer right now, is the take up of the food waste service. I know when we looked at this previously last year, it was coming in about a third of the households in the borough, if I remember correctly. Has that increased going since last year's data? It's basically asking if there are households that are basically putting out a caddy like once every 2 weeks, let's say, because I know there are people basically here in this meeting as well, who put a lot of their food recycling into compost bins as well. So has there been an increase in uptake over the past 18 months since we last did this report?
First question about the information of the outlets. That is all available on our website.
Thank you.
So that can be checked.
I knew I'd see it somewhere, but I couldn't remember exactly
Yeah,
where.
it is on the website. And secondly, your next question, as you mentioned before starting your question, it is difficult for us to find out during this lockdown that how many more people have actually started participating in the service. When we analyzed our data since April this year, as I said, that we have actually observed a 39% increase up until the end of August, and fresh data said a 28% increase. And hopefully that will increase again after the November data because of the pumpkin and all of these things. So there has been increase in the overall tonnages of the food waste. But again, it is really difficult for us to track whether that is in more people have started participating, or because of the lockdown, quite a lot of people are working from home. So it is difficult for us to actually segregate that data from those who have started participating as a fresh new member, or those who have started putting out more waste. So that was one of our plans as well, as I just mentioned, that we had plans to, along with our contractor Veolia, to use that clicker, identify first of all the low performing areas, and then use a clicker to identify which household is not participating, and then target, kind of like targeted campaign, go door knocking or sending letters or whatever. But because of, as I said, that our resources were so much engaged, our priority was to maintain 100% curbside collection. And because of that, it was not possible. And on the top of that, as I said, closure of the outlets, as whenever we promote any kind of food waste or recycling, whatever, there must be something in the background to provide those receptacles to our residents as well. So because of all these factors, we couldn't really pursue our plan to increase our participation rate. So hopefully when things go to normal, we will try to maintain our collection, our tonnages as they are, and we'll be in a much better position to find out whether there was an increase in the participation or same residents have started putting out more waste.
Thank you. I look forward to receiving that information when it comes through in due time, but that you've answered everything. Thank you very much, Iram.
You're welcome.
I've still got Andrew, Prue, Alison, Paul and Abdul. So let's move now to Andrew.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening, Iram, and thank you very much, for a really good report and excellent presentation and very clear answers to the questions so far. I've got just two questions, if I may, but I'd like to preface the first one by saying it's really good to see on page 24 a reference to encouraging food waste minimisation next year, besides the food waste collection. I think that's really, really important. It's a kind of first question is kind of a follow on from some of the issues that Guy's just raised, because I've been told that some councils found that food waste recycling started really well, with initially increasing participation rates that then fell back, sometimes to around 35–40%. What specific strategy and tactics are in place to try to achieve, I think, your target next year of 75% household participation rate? And then the second question is about the delivery service that you're offering through ABC Cars at the moment, which I think, again, is another excellent initiative, especially when it's directed at the more geographically isolated parts of our borough. Is this something that you anticipate only continuing during the pandemic, or is it something that might continue longer term? Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. The second question I will answer first. This is our temporary measure because most of the outlets are closed, and I just explained that it's a costly kind of option, but in order for us to have our receptacles available to residents, it was the most viable available option for us. So this is only linked to pandemic. So as soon as we move to into the normal condition, normal circumstances, there is no more lockdown, we will go back to the normal route. The strategy of increasing participation, you're right that this is a universal factor throughout the country, that food waste starts really very well, and with the passage of time, it drops down. But again, if there is a proper communication campaign, quite a lot of these boroughs, they start afresh. And second factor that I would like to remind everyone, and everyone must be aware, that previously there wasn't too much focus on the climate change and global warming and all of these things. So I always say whenever I do presentation that we thank a lot to our residents that they have participated quite very well. But on the basis of this success, there is the factor of Sir David Attenborough as well as Greta Thunberg. They have played a really vital role. And when we started introducing this service, quite a lot of our residents, they were upset due to the fact that we are introducing plastic bags. But looking at the bigger picture, it was really, we did inform them it was really difficult for us not to provide the bags because not every resident is happy presenting their food waste uncontained. So we are really hopeful that this trend will continue. There wouldn't be any drop in the service. But again, as I mentioned to Guy, that we have this plan of using this clicker, identifying the low performing areas, and we are really very closely monitoring our data. So you might have seen in the report on page 26, there is really detailed data, and that gives us all the data and all the information where we are currently in terms of our tonnages, whether they're increasing, they're decreasing. So hopefully we wouldn't let it drop.
Thanks very much, Hiram.
Okay, Prue.
Oops. Thank you. It's actually that table on page 26 that I wanted to talk about. I mean, Guy and Andrew between them have asked my main questions, which is about participation rates. But I'm afraid I struggled slightly with this table, and I'm sure it's me and not the table. But I was looking for the information to when you set up this project, you had several success indicators of success, and one of them, which I couldn't see reflected in the report, was about the contribution, the percentage contribution that the food waste makes towards recycling. And I'm afraid I couldn't work it out from the report. I think I understand what you're showing on page 26. You're showing a fall in the waste that doesn't get recycled, a rise in recycling, and the food waste. There's two columns. And I think what that is that the first blue column is the one that shows how much went into food waste, and the next figure is how much of the stuff that didn't go into food waste. But I don't know what happened to that, so I don't understand that. But can you tell me a percentage figure for how much of the waste of our recycling was food waste, and what percentage it contributed to that leap forward to 50%?
Yeah. If you, I think, see that I've included this information in the table on page. Sorry, I think, yeah, I've missed that. So 7% is what we actually said at the time of rollout that we will achieve, and that we have achieved.
Oh, right.
So
Okay. Actually say that unless I missed it somewhere.
Yeah, no, sorry, that's my apologies. I didn't include that. Sorry, I should have included. So 7% actually came from food waste, and as we had always been saying, that 7% will come from wood recycling. So together, that actually helped us achieve 50% recycling target. So yeah, and my apologies that if the table is not really very clear.
Because I haven't. I'm substituting for somebody, so I've not followed this all the way through. So I'm not as up to speed as everybody else. Could you just explain for me what the residual minimised column means?
So the residual minimized is actually what we actually could mainly disappeared in terms of residual waste altogether. So if you actually deduct this figure of 5288 and 616, so it will come up as 5154. Sorry, from 462. So that is exactly where the variance of the general waste is.
Okay, so that's basically waste you didn't get anymore.
Exactly. So if you see one column under the food waste is where residents have actually produced more waste, but that was directly food waste. So we didn't have that waste before when their food waste collection service was not there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. Yes, I'll have to think about it a bit more, but yes, no, I think it does. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but please feel free to come back if you want any further explanation. I can actually explain it in writing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Alison.
Good evening. Hiram, I'm not sure that the households who don't make use of the food caddy and the food waste collection bin necessarily need to be sort of identified and encouraged, because I'm aware of families in Woodley and in Earley who put all of their food waste collection into their garden compost bins. So they're not putting it into their blue bags, they never have. Would it be possible to collect in the black caddies and food waste bins from the people who've, they've never used them, they're in perfect condition still, so that we can recycle them rather than buying new ones for residents moving into the borough?
Thank you very much. Yeah, of course. If we are aware and we are 100% sure that their food waste is not getting into the blue bags, then we can collect them. But I will be a bit reluctant, because if we collect them, there is always certain kind of food waste that the residents are not really very much keen on putting in their compost heaps. So if we take those caddies back then and we start our campaign or promotion of the participation increase or whatever, then we have to deliver them back. So I would say that will be wiser for us to have our campaign first and speak with those residents. As you said, that you are aware of those people, those residents who are not really using them.
Well, they've got no need for them, because they're effectively recycling their food waste themselves. And there's certainly no suggestion in Iram that we're going to force any resident to participate in this scheme.
It's not forcing. What I'm saying, that if we collect, we can certainly collect the caddies. But as I said, that not all of their food waste, usually residents don't put them in the compost. For example, onion peels or bones or these kind of things, or cooked food. So they never actually, when I've spoken with residents, they are not really keen on putting those kind of food waste in their compost.
Yeah, I think that brings me on to my second question, which is about, it chimes in a little bit with Andrew, that ultimately our whole message is to reduce waste, well, to just put an end to waste, so that people are, that they're using up their leftovers in a variety of different ways, and they're not, we don't, and learning to use composters, etc., so that we're ultimately not having so much to collect from our residents. Likewise, rather than encouraging people to recycle, we want them to reuse, to repair, or to really, reject, not buy things that are hugely packaged. I mean, I do that myself nowadays. When I'm going to buy, I don't know, croissants, I'm certainly not going to buy something that's individually wrapped in another plastic bag. I'd rather go somewhere where I just buy them in a paper bag. So I think, we do need to keep that top aim all the time of moving towards no waste at all, and people learning to use up all their leftovers and recycle them in different ways. And of course, a lot of more families are meat free these days, so they don't have bones.
Yeah, as I mentioned, that there is quite a lot of awareness amongst our residents, environmentally conscientious. We have been saying this before starting this service back in 2019, that if food waste decreases, and as long as it doesn't appear in blue bags, it means it's a positive decrease. And this column in the table on page 26, waste minimization, that actually the additional that is generated within food waste, that actually is a kind of indication where we can actually work to find out that why more waste was produced overall. And that is where we need to, once we start the campaign, we can focus our efforts to minimize the amount of waste, to figure out what is causing residents to produce additional waste, food in terms of food waste and all of these things. So that is all planned. But again, once we go back to normal conditions, so hopefully we will follow
Can I
those.
interject there a second, if Paul will forgive me? I've got a lot of sympathy with what Alison is suggesting. There must be some way around it. Could we think about some way? For example, leafleting all the houses when the waste collectors go round and asking them, perhaps put a sticker on their bin if they don't need it anymore, if they don't use it at all. I'm sure that's just an off-the-cuff idea, but perhaps could you investigate some means by which we could ask people if they do compost their stuff and never want to use a waste bin, because I think it's a good idea. Just leave it with you to think through, maybe.
Yeah, we can certainly look into that after identifying from residents that what are the reasons if they are composting and all of these things. So we can collect them. So as long as they are not really, we don't really deter them or we don't really leave them out of the campaign. So there is no problem in getting that.
Maybe
But it should be,
give them a sticker to put on the bin and leave it out to say, please collect this bin or something.
Yeah.
Because, Pauline, of course, we are going to be collecting in the black boxes from the summer onwards, aren't we? So perhaps the two things could be combined as an efficiency.
Yeah, we will look into that. Yeah.
Let me leave it with you to think about.
Thank you.
Apologies, Paul. Your turn now.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Irem. My first lesson is I should put my hand up quicker, because I had 6 questions lined up and Irem has actually answered all of them because she went into so much detail about the households. That was two of the questions.
Thank goodness for that, Paul.
So that's good news. Just a point, food waste bags and the bins, Winnersh Parish Council have actually got those, and we are giving those out to residents when they ask. So you might find some of the town and parish councils have got the same. So it is another outlet. I was actually pleased to read on page 24 about the waste minimisation. We need really like an educational target to drive down that waste. You'll always get some food waste because you end up with things like banana skins or potato peelings, that sort of thing, and tea bags and coffee granules. You'll always end up with something there, but it's driving down that real food waste of people opening some sandwiches and then throwing most of them away, or a pasta or something like that. And particularly vegetables, when they go and buy them in those packets from the supermarket, and then 10 days later they realise they're still in the fridge, and then they go and throw the whole of that lot away, and that is just a total waste. So I think it's that educational side of driving down that waste. But all my other questions were answered. So thank you very much, and a really good report. Thank you, Irem.
Thank you.
Abdul, are you with us now, or are you still in the car?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Again, just like Paul, most of my questions have been answered. However, I think you've echoed about you use ABC card. Is this a required basis, or is it they have a contract with us? Then how much does it cost?
Thank you very much. They were with us as part of our community transport. So when the last time when everything just shut down, so we used them and they were really helpful. Up until the end of August, we didn't pay anything towards our deliveries, and we've started paying only from September. And we will, as I mentioned before, we will keep them only until the lockdown situation eases off and more outlets open. So they charge us on the basis of delivery. So this can be up and down. So there's not any kind of like static figure. But I can provide figures later on, whatever we have paid since September to them. So we have received only 2 or 3 invoices from them up until now.
No, this is I ask because in the future, if you do have this accessibility, which is good. Thank you very much. And it was an excellent report. Good to hear. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Rochelle.
Hi. What percentage of the recycling has been rejected due to wet paper, etc.?
What percentage?
Yes.
So looking at the figures from last year, we have lost more than 4% due to our wet paper. And we are expecting that this could be for 1 full year, because our wet paper issue started affecting us only from November last year. And that was calculated from November until the end of March. But going forward, it will be for 1 full year, that will be 6% we are expecting.
So 6% versus the cost of bringing these new bags in, is it worthwhile?
It is, because this is in longer term. So it is environmentally, it is more sound, more robust, as well as it will be more like reducing our dependency on energy from waste. What happens currently when these are collected? Our contractor FCC, they have to rerun it, so slowing the MRF down. So it's not really a very easy process. So there's quite a lot to it, which is a really detailed discussion in itself. So it's not only just rejecting the whatever. So there is letting it dry that takes so many days or weeks, and then rerunning it through the MRF by slowing it down. And then if it is still not good quality, then it is just sent to energy from waste. And as we have always said that there is £100 differential between recycling and energy from waste or landfill. So that is quite a lot of cost.
So you're talking only about 4 to 6% of the total waste is not usable. What's going to happen with big, large boxes, which are very hard to get into those very little bags that we're going to get?
The bags themselves, they are bigger than the boxes. It's, I think, just the texture of the bag that makes this kind of feel that they are not really very good. Our comms will concentrate on breaking down and folding the cardboard. And we will be really hard on that and really helpful wherever we find that residents are not really very finding it really easy. And in addition to that, we will have more bags available. So once the borough-wide delivery is done, then more bags the resident can pick up or we can deliver.
Can we still use the boxes if we have lids?
For very limited time. Unfortunately, lids is not really. We have gone through this options appraisal with the consultants Resource Future. And we have looked into the financial implications of lists for the boxes, and it is not really possible for us to have that option and introduce lids for the entire borough to keep the paper and card dry.
It's less expensive than new bags, but I've been using lids for a while, and none of my cardboard gets wet.
One of the major issues with that is it is totally a resident's discretion. So we can provide these lids, but again, it depends that if they leave that lidless, then we will continue to be collecting all the wet paper. So these bags that we will introduce, these come with all the automatic flap, so that will seal automatically. So they just have to
actually had this debate in the past, and it has been resolved, so I don't think we need to dwell on that any further.
Thank you.
That's okay with you, Rochelle.
Thank you.
I've got 3 quick questions which should have quick answers. Firstly, the report says since April 2020, 2,278 tons of waste have been collected. Is that all recyclable waste, or does that include landfill waste?
That is all food waste, which is recycled. And sorry, this figure I need to correct. That's more than 3,000. Okay. So it's all food waste that is being recycled that we have collected.
Thank you. The report also says there's 54% of food waste recycled in Q1, April to June. What's the percentage for Q1 and 2 together?
That is last year. So this year percentage together is, let me double check. That is 51.96 this year. So last year we performed really very well because wet waste was not an issue. So we all of a sudden, as soon as we introduced the food waste, our percentage reached the peak of 57%. But this year, because we are still continue to receive this issue of wet paper, so our recycling rate for the first 2 quarters is 51.96%.
That's since April.
Yeah.
The April just gone, thank you. And lastly, there is a reference in the report to the green bags for recycling paper. Can you tell me when those green bags are going to be sent out and when the black bags will be collected? Will black boxes be collected? Will they be collected at the same time?
We are still looking into that. That's all dependent on the delivery from the suppliers. Because of the shipment and all of these things, that will, in the coming few weeks, perhaps information will be much clearer and it will be sent out. Sorry, your next question was about when the boxes will be
really
Boxes.
wanted to know when the green sacks would be sent out, and also
Yeah.
when the black boxes would be collected.
Yeah, as I said, information will be much clearer in the next few weeks. We are speaking really closely in contact with the supplier.
Can
Who
you give me some sort of ballpark month?
Hopefully by
February, May.
Maybe end January or February. But the box.
Pauline, sorry to interrupt there. I think I just wanted, so it's Claire here. I just wanted to clarify a bit around the bags. So the suppliers of the recycling bags have met their deadlines for the delivery, for the manufacture. But you might have seen in the national news about the challenges that are being faced by shipping companies at a global level. Primarily due to COVID, you know, people who are poorly and sick, who are self-isolating, who so staffing at the ports is reduced. Also, the levels of PPE has really increased, and that needs to be shipped internationally. So at the moment, we've been very fortunate that we're working very, very closely with the suppliers. And they've now been able to ship the first batches of those recycling bags. And at the moment, we're looking to see whether or not what the timescales are. We're really hoping that they can be delivered as soon as delivered to our residents as soon as absolutely possible. And we're looking at possibly an early February start date for that. And what the last thing we want to do, because of the shipping challenges, is to start doing that and then find that we have to stop halfway through. So we really are dependent on kind of the next few weeks and understanding the kind of global challenges that are being faced in order to be able to give some real certainty about those timescales.
Does that mean they're coming from abroad then, Claire?
They're coming from. There was nowhere in the country in Britain that could manufacture the bags, so they do have to come from abroad. Yes.
But could you let members know as soon as you know when they'll be going out? Because we would like to tell residents know as well.
Absolutely.
And, the other question was: will the black boxes be collected at the same time as the green bags go out?
At the moment, the plan is to look at trying to roll them out to collect them at a later date, and primarily because we want to encourage residents to reuse them in their own homes. So we'll be doing some comms around the opportunities for them to reuse those boxes. For example, Pete has come up with a great idea around using them for planters. We're working with schools around what they could do to reuse them. So there's a whole area of work that we can do to try and make sure that rather than having to recycle, that obviously we can try and reuse, which is a much better option. And so that's something that we are working up at the moment.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Sorry to interrupt you, Aram. I just thought it'd be useful.
It's really helpful, Claire. Thank you very much for that. That's answered some important questions in my mind. Thank you. Let's now move to the recommendation then, which says the Overview and Scrutiny Committee consider and note the report on the performance of the new service and the progress achieved. Is there anybody that would want to vote against that? Or who doesn't have a hands up modem? Okay, any abstentions? Then thank you very much indeed, Erin, for coming to do that presentation, and that recommendation is agreed.
Thanks you very much. Thank you.
Right, now then, let's move to the street cleansing, item 56. And there are some appendices that go with that, with some rather intriguing pictures, rather helpful pictures, including of the new cleansing vehicles. And it's rather nice to see that they have a clear sign on the side identifying them with Woking Borough. So whoever thought of that, that's a great idea. Okay, who's going to do a quick presentation on that?
That's myself, Madam Chair.
I thought it was, thank you.
Yeah. Madam Chair, members, colleagues, thanks very much for giving me the opportunity. Work started on the street cleansing service some time ago when we let the Volker Highways contract, and we put a specific note into in the OJU notice so that we could include that service. And during 2019, we negotiated with Volker Highways to get a good outcome for that, and that was agreed by the executive that we would vary the do a variation order to bring that into the to the highway, bring street cleansing into the highway maintenance contract. That was good from a point of view of efficiency. It meant we had one management and governance system, which would be really helpful. And basically, street cleansing is a highway maintenance function, so it did mean that it was good sense. So we had a formal project group set up to do two things. Firstly, we had to mobilise the contract with Volker Highways and their selected subcontractor Urbaza, and we also had to demobilise the OCS contract for the street cleansing. But what we said we would do is we would keep the same specification to simplify matters. It was good news. We had almost 100% 2P transfer, which meant the existing staff were all transferred over on the 2P rules. As you said, we had a new fleet of vehicles brought in. You can see those in Appendix 2. We also reviewed the existing state of the cleansing across the borough with localities and the incoming contractor, and we agreed that we would commit some resources that we had available to bring some areas up to scratch. And you can see that in Appendix 1, which is the extra work we did to bring the various areas up to scratch. Also look at the three key performance indicators we've got for this contract. These are on top of the ones we've got for highway maintenance, and that is to 100% on litter bins, which has been achieved in the first 6 months. Sweeping and litter picking, we would expect a 95% success rate. That has over the first 6 months, that's at 69%. So we expect that to rise through the second half of the year to bring it to get to target. And fly tips, which had to be collected within 3 days of notification, that's running at 89% now, so not too far away. Some of the reasons for resource issues that we had was COVID, and three particular areas really. Was the first one was the litter bins. As most of you appreciate, there was lots of congregations, and it's been alluded to already, around open spaces, especially by young people, and we found it extremely difficult to keep up with litter bin emptying, and so we had to put extra resources into that, and so we could keep up with it. You wouldn't think that COVID would have much effect on street cleansing. However, when everybody in a borough like Wokingham, when everybody's working from home, where are the cars? They're also at home. So we had significant access problems in getting into various roads because of cars being parked on the highway. And the final one was fly tips, because that was also because of the tip shut. That was because of COVID, and that caused significant increases in fly tipping. Looking at the customer journey, we've got a new online system which is tied in with the highways contract, which is our HIM system, and so anybody can go online, look at highway sort of outdoor road maintenance, click on that, they go through to a map where they firstly put their road in, and it tells them when their road should be swept, so they may not bother if it's due to be swept. And then they can pinpoint a litter bin or a fly tip, and that goes through to our contractor. Since April, we've had 2,050 customer inquiries in the 6 months in April. 8% of them have been sweeping, 8% have been litter bins, and 84% have been others, which is mainly fly tipping, but some graffiti, but mainly fly tipping. So you can see fly tipping has more than doubled in the first 6 months of this year compared to last year, and last year was high as well. So that's an area where we need to concentrate on. So overall, it's been a good mobilisation, despite the demands of COVID. Resource-wise, they've kept up the resource and increased it where we have to. And the next target will be to have a service review. We always said that we'd look at the because we kept the same frequencies, we'd look at the service over after year 2. Actually, we're going to do it after year 1, and we're looking at better ways of dealing with it, and maybe look at an output-based specification where we're not going and sweeping clean roads, where we can maybe clean roads more appropriately. That's the report. The report's there. I'm happy to take questions. I'd also like to apologise, or it may not need an apology if you're not having to look at my face while I'm doing the report, because my camera this afternoon during another meeting packed up. I don't know what I've done to it, but
What a shame.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. And it was nice to read in the report the comment about Clevedon Drive and how well that particular cleaner had done. So thanks for popping that in.
Yeah.
Nice. Right, I've got Rochelle and then Paul, Andrew, Prue, Jim and Emma. And Abdul, your hand was up. Is it still up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Right then, Rochelle, go ahead.
Okay, Pete, I hate to say this, but I haven't seen them lately doing the sweeping on my road. I'll have to check the HIM system. But I'm home more than I ever was. And
we've lost you, Paul. Paul, can you hear me?
You haven't lost me.
Are you back with us, Paul? Are you with us again?
You've lost Rochelle. You've lost Rochelle.
Oh, it was Rochelle that was speaking, was it?
Yes, it was.
Ah.
Yeah, my voice isn't as high as hers.
No, it isn't, is it? I was just looking at your name. You go ahead then, and when Rochelle gets back, we'll come back to her.
Okay, thank you, Pauline. And thank you, Peter, for your report and presentation. I've just got one question really around on page 27. You talk about sweep and litter pick to grade A. I'm questioning the litter pick. I've witnessed the road and footway sweeping, but not the litter picking at the same time. And a resident in Winnersh does a weekly litter pick, different location each time. And he posts these on Facebook and he collects up to 6 bags each time. Could you describe what you mean by a grade A litter pick? Thank you.
What we mean by grade A is when the road has been done, I would not expect to see any litter or detritus on the footway or the channel, the road channel. If there is, then really, and I should have stressed this earlier, that customer journey we were talking about, the only way we can sort of get reaction is that we get people to report it online and report if the roads after they've been done has not been swept and it's litter free, then I would expect it, and that's the verge as well. So that's extent to extent of the highway. So if you've got a fence on either side of a road, you've got a verge, you've got a footway, I would expect all of that to be litter free.
So the machine goes through on the footway, and because they come round together, don't they? Or tend to
it depends. Sometimes they will put a channel sweep, a large sweeper in,
yeah,
and they'll put a path sweeper, and you'll also get the litter pick following.
Yeah, because what I've seen is the road sweeper doing the channel, and the footway sweepers coming along behind him, but the verges have been left.
Right.
And
Well, then, if you
I
need to
have
make a complaint about that, let us know about that.
I will do, because
Yeah.
they're due to come round the first week of December. So I'm going to watch them this time round and see if there's a third man walking behind doing any litter picking, because I have never seen
All
anybody.
right. Well, it may not be exactly the same time, but I would expect it to be. If it's not done on the same day, then
Yeah.
you really need to report that as a complaint, and they have to do that within 24 hours.
Yeah, because this guy in Winner, she's doing a sterling job picking up all these bags of rubbish each week, and up to 6 bags is unbelievable. And he's getting
amazing.
most of it from the verges either side of the footway.
And Adopt a Street really is designed to supplement what we do, not substitute it.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you
Okay.
very much, Paul.
Okay. I will look out in first week.
Please do.
Thank you, Peter.
Rochelle, I think you're back with us now, aren't you?
Yes, I had to blame my IT support crew of my 2 cats. I think they probably helped
I
better
saw
than
an animal there. Carry on,
Anyway, I haven't seen the street sweepers on my cul-de-sac lately, but I'll have to check the hymns thing just to make sure and see if that's it. Because I'm here more than I ever was normally without not during the lockdown. So I would expect to see them more often, but either that or they're picking the times that I happen to walk away from the area or take the dog for a walk or the cats for a stroll.
As I just said to Paul, if there's anything wrong, if it's not been done on the right day or it's not been done properly, then please go online and report it on the HIM system.
I will. I'm going to check more and see when they're actually supposed to be here.
Good.
Then. All right. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Andrew.
Yes, thanks, Chair, and good evening, Pete. I'm a huge fan of the online map-based reporting system. I think it's absolutely great. And I think we're getting a lot more of our residents in early, starting to use that. But quite recently, discovered with one of your officers that a number of the rubbish bins are not actually shown at the moment, and that there are 2 different types of symbols being used. Now, the officer has said that he is trying to get that that issue resolved. I just thought I would mention it to you tonight because I think residents are increasingly wanting to prepared to use what I think is a fantastic system. Now, I've actually got four questions, and I'll break them down into 2 parts if I may. And the first one, please don't take this in the wrong way. I hope you'll see where it's going. But it's, are you really confident that there's sufficient capacity in place to ensure that the street sweeping schedule can be adhered to, and to ensure that the needed out of schedule requests can be dealt with promptly, and to cope with the number of new housing estates? And then the second question is, are there sufficient checks and balances in place to ensure that some streets where residents and councillors who are particularly vigilant and prompt in logging requests for street sweeping don't end up getting swept at the expense of others that could get very dirty because there's no local champion?
I'll go to the first one, resource. I mean, I expect them to provide the resource if they get their work done properly. If they get the 95% of the roads swept when they should do them, then they shouldn't need the extra resource to go around and redo them. So that's in there. So if they have to bring an extra resource in to do that, then I would expect them to do that, and not at the expense of the scheduled sweeping.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first one. On the second one, I do take your point. We don't sort of pick areas where we have people of who we know will complain. We want a universal service. We don't want to just go around and do it. Now, if there's a regular complaint or an ongoing complaint, then we will look at that and we'll make sure they get it right. But once again, I mean, it's not in their interest to miss areas, because we know that they know that our discerning residents and Wokingham residents are very, very discerning, and as they should be, and they know that they're going to call in and they're going to have to go back.
Thank you. Two more quick questions, if I may. You'll recall that recently we talked about bin provision, and in particular about redeploying some underutilised bins. Now, it makes a lot of sense sometimes to redeploy underutilised bins to other locations where there's an unmet demand. However, can you confirm that there is a budget for new and additional bins where redeployment is not possible? And if so, roughly how many new bins are likely to be installed this year? And finally, on a completely different side of this question, would it be possible to include performance data in the next report relating to the policy of achieving 3 herbicide treatments per annum between April and October? And can you clarify whether this applies to footpaths and cycle paths as well as to roadways? Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. We do get data on the herbicide treatment, and it does apply to all the adopted areas. Okay. Going back to the litter bins, as an interest, I'm very picky. I like to look after the council's money, and the first thing I ask when someone asks if they want a new litter bin in, I say, well, is there a litter problem? And if they say yes, I usually get localities to check it out. There was someone in Winnersh that wanted a new litter bin by the bridge, and we put that in because we found there was a litter problem. But what I always say, and my comment is, we can't always put a litter bin everywhere that someone either finishes a bar of chocolate, empties a cigarette pack, or a dog decides that's where he wants to go. It's people are going to have to walk to the litter bins in some cases. So as whilst redeployment, I think, is a good way of doing it, we do increase. We don't have a target for increasing litter bins for obvious reasons. We've got 1,000. We've just done we've got 1,250 in the borough, and my personal view is that that's probably too many. And that's one of the things we will be looking at. Well, one of the things we will be looking at when we do the rationalisation.
Thanks, Pete. I'm not sure it's too many though, but thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you. Abdul.
Thank you, Pauline. Hi, Peter. Good to hear from you.
Hello,
I like your comment. I like your comment when you say you like to look after council's money. That's what we like to hear more from the officers. Yeah. My question relates to you echoed. You got contractors and subcontractors about the top people. I mean, who's going to be policing all of them in case a complaint goes high or So I'm just wondering who will be the responsible.
Well, we have a very good governance system within the highway maintenance contract. It's within the Wokingham Highway Alliance, and we meet on a number of occasions through the week with our highway colleagues. So we have lots of eyes and ears out there, including localities. I mean, localities are key to us maintaining the standards across the borough. And if as Andrew said, if there's some areas where we don't think are up to scratch, we can then get localities to go in and monitor an area more closely if we need to. So I think the governance system is very good. Our primary contractor is Volker Highways, and also Urbasa, who are the subcontractor, are have come in and made a very good start. As with all contracts, I don't think you can just let them go and relieve them. So our monitoring around the contract itself is robust, and the monitoring around the ground grassroots monitoring is with localities and ourselves. We do go out and check it ourselves.
Yes, thank you, Peter. I'm also very pleased to hear that no staff has lost their job. They just moved from A to B, which is very
good. Funny enough, it's one of those jobs with refuse collection and street sweeping. They tend to stay put, really.
All right. Thank you, Pauline.
Okay, Prue.
Thank you, Pauline. Hello, Pete.
Hello,
I want to move on to a slightly different bit, fly tipping.
Oh, yes.
So the first bit is not exactly a complaint. It's something to point out, which I thought Paul might mentioned, but he was talking about something else, and then something else. So the first one is, because some fly tipping takes place on sort of footpaths, public footpaths, or areas away from roads, and on HIMS it's quite difficult to report them because it won't let you put a dot on those places.
Yeah.
Because they're not on a street or a bit of adopted road or whatever it is. So is there a way to enable us to report them when they're not actually on a road, when they're actually down a footpath or something?
We are working on that because it's one of the small disadvantages of having it with the highway maintenance contract is that what we didn't want to do is to get people to start reporting potholes and things on private areas.
Yes.
And so, but we are working towards, and it was something that we couldn't introduce to cover every area because we don't clear fly tipping off of private areas. It's something that my colleague Emma has been looking into, and we are looking at seeing if we can rectify that at some stage.
I can imagine it's quite a job because it's sort of public footpaths, isn't it? Bridleways and boats and things like that.
We should be able to get around that, and open spaces also causes a problem, which is why we have problems with the litter bins that are maybe differently. But leave it with us. We'll look at that and see if we can get something done about that.
The other thing was, I was encouraged to see in the report that you said you'd caught some people who'd been fly tipping, and I wonder if you could expand a bit and say how many people you'd caught and what had happened to them.
Yeah, localities do that. Let me. I mean, I think most of the actions that we take are around fixed penalties. Although the burden of proof is the same for a fixed penalty as it is for a full-blown prosecution, but it's quite time-consuming. Although we have teamed up with our public protection, the Public Protection Partnership, where they've got a wealth of experience, and Mark Redfern and Nick have been working very closely with them to push prosecutions. To push prosecutions through. It's true, we've not been brilliant at getting prosecutions because the time it takes to build the case. But when people who are regulars at it, they do get it done pretty quickly. I can come back to you on that and give you some more stats.
I'd be interested to know, because I think the more publicity we can give to the fact that council's catching people and finding them, the better.
Well, that's the advantage of a prosecution, because you can't publicise the fixed penalty.
Oh, right.
But you can publicise a prosecution, especially if it's a large one. And earlier this year, some of them were very, very large.
Yes. Yeah. No, thank you.
Thank you, Prue. Jim.
Sorry, was that me, Pauline? Yeah. Pauline, was that for me?
Yes, sorry, Jim. Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't hear. Pete, firstly, another thank you to you and the team for carrying on and delivering the service during the COVID period, and pass on our thanks for that. It really is appreciated. Couple of questions. Been emptying 100% on the correct day. What we've seen locally here is that the bins are actually full and people are using it almost as a centralised way of placing their rubbish. I can't think of a better way of describing it other than actually fly tipping. Has that been a problem across the piece? And if so, have we measured the impact of that? And then if I can, after that, I'll ask a question on encroachment.
Yeah. I mean, just going back to that one, only this week, we've got someone in Lower Early going around depositing black bags around litter bins in the area. Now, we suspect that is a business going around depositing rubbish, and certainly is flight. I mean, it's two issues. If it's a business, then they've got a duty of care to dispose of their rubbish properly. So yeah, and localities are now onto that and keeping a close watch on it. If they find evidence in there and it's a business, then they're probably not going to issue a fixed penalty. They're probably go through and try and get a prosecution. Is
it something we measure, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, definitely measure, and the fly tips and the enforcement actions we do is something that we have to record on waste data flow. So it's reported every quarter. So I'll now you've said that, I'll get some stats out for those follow-ups, those investigations.
I'm part of the working group on fly tipping, Pete, so I see the report.
Oh, yeah.
And the point of the question was, has it become a wider problem due to COVID of people thinking that they deposited their rubbish in the right place by putting it next to a bin that's full?
It's no doubt about it. There has been fly tipping at what we would call informal tipping points. Right. We had a massive problem in Loddon where we've got a recycling site where people are regularly dumping rubbish there. The general feeling is that it's a tip of some sort, and we would find it difficult to prosecute, which we may do, but we'd certainly do a fixed penalty if it wasn't commercial waste.
Okay, and the next question, Pete, is on encroachment, and I wasn't sure if this was proper to this or to the grass cutting thing earlier, but I'll ask it here. A lot of the pictures you show on encroachment on page 38 are of grass and soil encroaching onto a footpath. Yeah. One of the biggest issues with encroachment is that of around head height, where the undergrowth and the bushes and hedgerows and whatnot come out across the footpath. How do we deal with that as an issue?
It can be quite complex, because the best way to keep detritus from encroaching onto the footpath, that's the soil comes onto the footpath. If we can't get a sweeper on there, and one of the ways you can't get a sweeper on there is if you have head-high vegetation and you physically can't get on. It looks like you're okay, but you can't get on because of vegetation, and they're often from different areas. So if the vegetation's coming from a private property, that's something the private property would need to do, and we would talk to our highway inspectors to say you've got an encroaching vegetation. If it's on the ground level, then it will be us to clear. If it's our own vegetation, so if the vegetation belongs to us, then it'd be the grounds maintenance team that would go out and cut it back. So it is quite complex. We've got a working group at the moment on encroachment, and we're really putting a lot of effort into it, because we know that a lot of parish and town councils are concerned about it as well. And as you say, it encroaches on the footpath and it makes it unsafe. And so we've got a concerted effort within that Wokingham Highway Partnership, the alliance, that we're going to do some work on it. If there are any areas that are poor, then please report them.
Well, when that work's done, it would be good if you could come back to this committee and give us an update on that, because I think that's quite an important issue. Thank you.
Will do.
Thank you. Emma?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to say to Pete, thank you. Partly because I've had a few fly tipping issues, and every time I've contacted you, Pete, you've been so good. You've got out rapidly and cleared it. So I just want to say thank you to you.
Thanks, Emma.
I thoroughly agree, Emma. Thank you, Anna. Paul, and then Parry wants to come in. Paul.
Thank you, Pauline. It's just coming back on the point that Prue made about fly tipping on rights of way. I've actually reported quite a number of fly tips on rights of way, and the system does work. There were some issues at the very beginning, back in April, where there was a problem, but that's been fixed now. So you can actually report it where there are rights of way, which is actually not on the normal road network, and it's fine. It does work. So I just thought I'd let you know.
Brilliant. Should have asked you.
Well done, Paul.
Tonight. Rest in peace.
Parry.
Apologies about that, Chairman. Yeah, Prue, thanks for that lovely question about the number of fixed penalty notices. Both Paul Fishwick and Clive Clive Jones are on the cross-party working group on fly tipping, and we meet frequently. And since April 2020, 45 fixed penalty notices have been issued and provided a fine income of about £9,540. Now, this means that enforcement activity has been possible in approximately 5% of fly tipping incidents across the borough. During 2019-2020, 40 fixed penalty notices were issued, equivalent of about £6,000, meaning enforcement was possible in about 3.1% of the incidents. Fixed penalty notices come in all sorts of shapes and sizes: £80 fine for one bag of waste and £400 fine for anything larger. So fine income from fixed penalty notices retained by the council. Fines from prosecutions, strangely enough, hardly anything comes back to the council. It gets kept by the court. So those are the stats that were presented at the last working group for fly tipping. And so I hope that answers your question to an extent. But at the same time, Madam Chair, if I want to express my sincere thanks to the team, Claire, Lawrence, Peter, Emma and Iram. They're doing a wonderful job, and keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Parry. That was well said, and I think we all agree with that statement. I've just got one more question, a little bit specific, but it is a general one as well. In the appendix, there's a photograph of Red Lake Lane, which is in my ward. This fly tipping happens regularly at that spot. Almost as soon as it's been cleared away, there's another lot that's been dumped. I mean, that's the specific, but the more general question is, are we able to follow up the dumpers? And is there very much where we can find out where the same person has dumped time and time again?
Madam Chair, yes. I mean, we can if there's evidence. If there's evidence, and I always say one of the best ways of preventing fly tips is if everybody, because most of this stuff comes from our businesses and our homes. If you make sure that your rubbish doesn't get dumped at the end of some lane where you end up with a fixed penalty notice. And that's what will happen, because we all have a duty of care to make sure our own waste is cleared. But generally, the larger fly tips, they're quite clever, and they make sure that there's no evidence there. If we get an eyewitness, generally the stuff's tipped at night. Generally from a moving vehicle, they just open the doors or put the tipper up and let it drop, and that's why we have calls out of hours sometimes to clear roads in the middle of the night, especially our highways and byways. So yes, we do. If there's evidence, they will follow it up.
And do they get a bigger fine if it's the same person caught more than once? If
they had a case and there was multiples, then obviously that would go to court and could be a significant fine. Bearing in mind, it can be up to £50,000 fine and 2 years imprisonment. It's a criminal offence, and there is no limitation on it. It's a criminal offence, and so it doesn't go out of a certain time and go out of limit.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, and just to stress again that the Public Protection Partnership have been having a proactive campaign on fly tipping.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And thank you for the report. Right, then let's move to the recommendation, which says that the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee consider and note the progress report on the mobilisation and start of the contract on the 1st of April 2020. Is there anyone who has a problem with that, wants to vote against it? Or any abstentions? then that's been agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Right then let's move on to other topics. The performance indicators, item 57. And can I say yet again that these indicators are for July, August and September, and we're now at the end of November. Is there no way that we can have them in a more timely way for the month that we're in? And if not, why not? So maybe the officer could answer that one first, please. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, thank you for the first point. I will. My name's Louise Griffin. I work in Communities Insight and Change Directorate. I'm here on behalf of Laura Callan this evening, who sends her apologies. Yes, thank you for the comments regarding the timeliness of the reporting. We are looking at it internally. Generally, it goes through a fairly lengthy internal review process before we share the reports publicly. So you're right, this report is for the end of September, which is nearly 2 months behind. I will take that as an action to discuss with our director, and we'll look at whether we can get this more timely. So yeah, thank you for that comment. I think yeah, we'll review the timescales where we can.
Would be much more useful to us, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, members, if you want, please could give the page number and the performance indicator number before you ask your question, then we can all look it up at the right place. Andrew and then Paul.
Sorry, I think Paul had his hand up before me.
You're quite right, yes.
Sorry.
I saw yours first. Paul.
Very kind of you, Andrew. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Louise. Page 66. RA5A, percentage of successful homeless preventions. It states there were 12 households in Wokingham Borough whose prevention duty ended. 8 of these ended successfully, with accommodation being secured for 6+ months. So what happened to the other 4 households?
I think you're on mute, Louise.
Louise, I can't lip read.
Apologies. That's a good start from me, isn't it? Apologies for that. Yeah, I was just trying to find the indicator there. Yeah. I will take that back to the service and see if they can explain that a bit further for us. Okay. I don't think I've got any further detail I can add on that one, I'm afraid. But
yeah, I couldn't see anything else to clarify what happened to those other 4.
Yeah. Okay.
So page 73. PG26, air quality. Why hasn't the data for the M4 on Twyford Crossroads been shown for 2018? That's been monitored for many years. And also, Wokingham Town Centre was closed or restricted due to the regeneration works, and therefore nitrogen dioxide levels would be lower, and that should be noted somewhere on that indicator.
Right, okay. Thank you for that information. I will liaise with the Public Protection Partnership on that one, and I'll clarify that for the next report. Thank you.
And my final one, because I haven't got anything where there's impact from COVID, because it throws all the figures out all over the place. Page 75, PG 16. Okay, enabling sustainable travel, length of greenways and cycleways delivered. It states the council aims to deliver 3 kilometres of combined cycleway greenway by March 2021. And work is scheduled to begin on section 1, route B, in December 21. That's the Cantley bit. Yeah. Section 2, and then section 3 for completion in June 2021. If that was the case, the target's missed. I think the dates are wrong somewhere.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay. That's the end of my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Andrew, then.
Yes, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Louise. And I fully appreciate, that you may well have to get back to us, on the answers to these questions as well. But if I could log the questions, that would be really, really helpful. The first one is on page 49, AS9. Permanent admissions to residential and nursing care homes. The target's 130 per 100,000 or less. I think it'd be very instructive to know what the figures were pre-pandemic. As the population ages, does this target have to change at all? And how significant are the financial costs to WBC of the above target admissions, and how many of these pandemic related admissions are likely, or the costs are likely to be recoverable from Westminster? So quite a number of questions around that target.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. I've noted those, and I will I'll liaise with the service. Thank you.
Okay, so the second question relates to page 50, RA7, and it's good that at last there's a lot more clarity around the level of central government pandemic related support. Has what's already been received or promised sufficient to cover all of the pandemic related expenditure? And how far forward are government commitments known for? Are there any concerns that money for the long-term pandemic-related costs might not be sufficient? Here I'm talking specifically about the money coming from Westminster. And what levers does WBC have to try to ensure that this does not happen?
Okay, thank you. That's noted.
And then finally, a quick question about the local plan update, page 51, page 51, local plan update. What is the metric being used to determine whether the target is on track? And is it possible to have a smart target relating to this? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. With that one, it's a slightly different way that the service assess whether it's on target or not. Yeah. But yeah, thank you for that point. I will clarify that with the officer. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise.
Okay, thank you very much. Jim?
There you go. Pressing all these buttons. Firstly, apologise for the first one, Louise. You've got a number of KPIs under development, including one that of special interest to me, which is the staff engagement measure. Have we got some dates as to when they will be introduced?
Yes, thank you for your question. In terms of the staff engagement, I would have to go back to the service. I know they're keen to get this engagement up and running more frequently, to start having perhaps online responses so they can measure both staff and resident satisfaction levels. I know at the moment, I believe work's in progress, but I haven't got knowledge of a target date as yet, but I will certainly liaise with the service and ask them to clarify that for you.
Thank you. A few more, if I may. Page 49, permanent admissions to care homes has shown an increase. That's actually quite surprising, given the number of people that are reluctant to put people into care homes at this moment in time. How do we measure that?
I'm afraid apologies. I'm afraid I don't have the details of that measure, but I will note the question and ask the officers to clarify that following this meeting.
Okay, another one for page 51 on the local plan update is to know whether it's on target or not. There should be a target date. Have we got a target date? Because I know it's moved a couple of times.
Okay. I will look into that one as well. Yeah, thank you.
I'm asking all the awkward ones. Sorry. Page,
no.
Page 63, C1, all recorded truck crime. At last week's full council, the Thames Valley Police gave us an update, and the indication there was that crime had actually dropped because of lockdown, or the total amount of crime. Yet we're actually showing an increase. Again, is how does that come about, given the what we're getting from the Thames Valley Police? Only a couple more, you'll be glad to know.
In terms of that one, Jim, I will double check. It's likely to do with our lag of reporting timescales. So potentially Thames Valley Police provided you with a more up-to-date status. So that could be a factor, but thank you. I will investigate that further.
A similar question on PG 12, which is on page 59. We show this is about the levels of traffic we're seeing. We report annually on that. Obviously, there's no figure there shown for 2020. Have we got an indication as to how COVID has impacted that? I'd just be interested to know what the impact has been.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
If we could, where have I got one more, I think. On the report and the appendix, where we have the performance things with Q1, Q2, Q3, etc., they're reversed between the two, and it confused an old man a little while ago. Could we just have them in the same? So if it's Q1 to Q2 or whether it's Q2 to Q1, just so I can follow the sequence. I was going through some of the KPIs and just couldn't. I got confused.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I will look at correcting that.
But it's a great amount of information on this. So well done, Louise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Rochelle.
Okay, I'm trying to get up. Okay.
You're muted, Rochelle. Can you turn your mute button on, please?
Yeah. Oh, okay, hi. Page 68, PG1, average percentage of Section 106 and SIL levies allocated to schemes. I believe it's been decreased significantly right now in this year as opposed to this last year, mainly because the developers have been holding on to SIL because they can't afford to pay it. How is that affecting all of the projects that we're going forward? Okay. And I've got two more after that, so.
Okay, thank you for that question. I will go back to the officer to get them to provide a response on that one. Thank you.
Okay, next question, PG3, same page. Local plan update, since I happen to be on the committee, is definitely going into the red at the moment because we haven't quite met for a while, and Graiseley is completely non-viable this time because of the DPZ. We are going to have to redo the whole thing, so we're probably 6 months to a year behind where we should be, maybe even further. And how will planning for the future, if it isn't U-turned, affect all of this?
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm giving you technical questions. You're probably going to have to come back to me for most of these.
No, thank you. Apologies to committee that I can't answer them, but I will action this after the meeting.
And the last one is PG6, the number of affordable dwellings completed. How has that been affected by COVID? Are we still completing them now at the same level, or has it, because this only went through to March, so I don't know what's happening in the last 6 months. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on with that as well.
Okay.
Sorry, it's probably another question you're going to have to ask. You have to go back and do this.
No, that's great. Thank you. I know that some of the planned completions, they did complete a significant proportion of their planned completions last year. And I know that in the first 2 quarters, often completions are not necessarily slower, but they tend to aim to complete them in quarters 3 and 4. So I know that much in terms of that measure, but I will speak to the service to get them to provide a full response to that one. Thank you.
They have been going forward with construction, which is one thing I was kind of surprised about, but they have been doing construction on a lot of the new projects. and I can see a lot of new facilities in Elmfield and in several other places. But please, if you can get back to me, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jim, you've got one more question.
It's more a comment, Louise. There's no need to apologise. We don't expect anyone to come along and know everything behind every single of those KPIs. So thank you for taking the stuff away.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree also, because I didn't expect you to have the answers. I just wanted to get them eventually.
Absolutely. Thank you, members.
And if there's nobody else, finally, I've got one question. It's about page 50, CIC 13, percentage of calls answered. Presumably, the target 95% is the number of calls to be answered. And 93%, 94% doesn't look too bad, but I think that gives a false picture. What I'd like to see added in would be two more performance measures. One, the time it takes to answer each call. I mean, a while ago, several years ago now, I think, we had the target of 3 rings. I think that's probably a bit unrealistic nowadays, but it could maybe 10 rings, for example. But I would like to see a measuring target to say how many rings people have to wait for before it's answered. And incidentally, it is very irritating when you phone up to be told you could have used the website. We know that. We would have used it if we didn't need to phone. And that adds a lot of time in as well. Anyway, that's beside the point. The other measure I'd like to see in is the number of calls dropped, because people, if they've waited too long, will just give up. And that's not good. It's not good for the residents who obviously need to talk to somebody and just can't. So is it possible to include those two key measures, the number of rings before a call is answered, and that should be a target of 100%, and the number of calls dropped, which would be a very low target?
Okay, sure. I can take that back to the service. I have seen internal measures around the abandon rate of calls, so I'm sure that's fine to include in the future report. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very, very poor image to give for the council to residents if that happens. Okay, thank you very much. I've got Jim again and then Rochelle.
Just as a quick update, Pauline, I do know that the whole way we measure our interaction with residents is being reviewed. I know there's a potentially a working party going to be set up to have a look at that. So before we implement any new measures, I think a check with Gregor, who I think is leading on that, might be useful.
Okay, Rochelle.
Okay, page 74, PG 13, proportion of highway infrastructure schemes on track for delivery. Does this include all of the dates that have been changed continuously, added on extra years, some of them as much as 5 years, for the percentages delivered on time? Or is this to the new dates that they're given all the time? I'm not going to call all of the projects, but I can say at least one of them is at least 6 to 10 years behind, and several other ones are at least 4 or 5 years behind, based on the original estimates, not based on when they're going to be actually delivering them. I know this is Paul's area, but I just happened to see this and I went, that's interesting.
Okay, thank you. I will ask the service to clarify how they've. I've got details of sort of a RAG status of each of the schemes within the highways, but I don't have insight into how they've set those timescales. But the thing is,
they changed the dates for the RAG each time. So if you if you extend the date for another year, then it's on time for the new date, but it's not really on time for the original project.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, understood. Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you very much. So if we can now turn back to page 45 to the recommendation, I would like to add in an amendment to that, an additional proposal based on what I was saying just now, and that would read, that CIC 13 should include 2 new measures, comma, time taken to answer calls and the number of calls dropped. Could we, I mean,
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Can I see a show of hands for those who are in favour of that, the whole recommendation, including that addition? If you'd like to put your hands up, please, and if you haven't got a little hand, if you could call out. I haven't put my own up yet.
Pauline, I'm having a few problems with raising my hand, so my hand is raised.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, that's fine. I think that's more or less, that's not entirely everybody, but it's everybody but, oh no, they're there now. Yep. That's unanimous then. Thank you very much indeed. That would be really useful to do.
Pauline, it's not unanimous. As I said earlier, I think there's because there's work going on about how we measure our interaction, I think, as an overview and scrutiny.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't fast.
Requesting additional measures on something when they're actually reviewing the whole thing at the moment, I don't think is the right thing to do, so I'm against, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's fine. It might give more power to their elbow, you never know. But there's one against. Is there any abstention? Put your hands down, thank you.
Chairman, just to clarify on that, it's Neil here.
Yeah.
As Jim's just said, as this is a piece of work going on, would it be better to recommend that we get a report back on those 2 points you've just made as part of the process of developing this corporate-wide approach to improving customer care?
Well, I would like to have a report back anyway, but we're only recommending, we're not insisting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right then, let's move on.
Thank you.
Item 58, which is really what we discussed last time, and it's the report that Neil's put together as a result of our discussion on COVID. Just find the right page. And also very, very helpfully, it does include the results of the survey, which I found absolutely fascinating. So that was really, really useful. Thank you for that. WDC response to COVID. There we go. And the recommendations are really the ones that we agreed last time, I think. There's 9 of them there. Andrew, is this the point where you would want to make your comments?
Could I ask Neil if this is the appropriate time?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay, go ahead then, Andrew.
Okay, so thank you. Recommendation 3. I'd like to propose that we add the following. It says the executive advised local care homes to review risk assessments and ensure for the duration of the pandemic, staff do not work in more than one care setting. And then the rest of that recommendation as it is. Now, this is something that we did quite specifically refer to during our discussions last time.
Yes, you're right. We can't actually dictate what they do. So how about if we included before what you said, we advise that. Mm. Yeah, because we can do no more.
Yeah,
I'm happy to second that, actually. Shall we vote on that one? Is there anybody that would like to speak on it? Alison?
I was simply going to say that I believe that that has been a Borough Council policy from very early on in the pandemic, that care staff should not be moving between settings.
Yeah, I know. This might reinforce it, though, to get the publicity out.
Well, I think we are well ahead of other boroughs where that is a continuing issue, but it has been something that's been stopped, here for many, many months now.
Mm. Well, what about we continue? We advise that care homes continue.
I don't think it has been stopped because we don't control what happens in the care homes. That's why there's an emphasis on risk assessments.
Mm. Okay, Prue, what did you want to say?
I haven't got my hand up.
Oh, you have? Never mind. Paul.
Thank you, Chair.
My hand was left up accidentally.
It's just for clarification, it's actually recommendation 2, and Andrew said 3.
No, it's been changed in the latest.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. I'm reading what's online, so I do apologise if the numbers have changed slightly. But I was going to second what Andrew had said, but
okay.
Okay, thank you.
Where is this different version then?
Sorry, who's that?
So this is Prue. Sorry, I'm confused.
Oh, yeah, okay, Prue.
Because I've got the report, the agenda that was sent to us, and my recommendations are not numbered the same as the ones Andrew's got. Then when was the other thing sent out with different recommendations on it?
Andrew, can you read out the whole of that one?
I've taken my my page
Andrew?
from the online. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would it be easier to share your screen?
Sentence.
I don't know how to do that. Yeah.
Never mind then.
Yeah, but it's page 13, and whatever is online at the moment. Okay, and then it says point 3. The committee recommend.
Oh, I mean, I'm in Mod Gov looking at page 81.
So am I.
Chair,
I'm on page 81.
Same position. It's page 81, recommendation number 2.
Yes.
It's the one that Neil sent a few days ago.
Right. Okay.
If you look up Neil Carr.
Yeah. So why is Andrew suddenly saying 3? Is he saying 3?
Then I'm referring to the minutes.
Oh, right.
On page 13 in the minutes.
Okay. You need to look at number 2, page 81, I think.
Can we look at the report itself, please? Can you find page 81, Andrew?
I'm not sure I know how to share a screen with myself. Let me see.
If I can help, Chairman, it's the same recommendation, just a different number. So I think the words are the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it the last one?
No. Hang on.
Andrew, if you're looking at the top right of your screen, there should be a square with an upwards arrow. That's the sharing content button, or Control plus Shift plus E.
Or is it easier for one of us to share what's on page 81?
That would be easier. Yeah.
Right, I can do it. Give me a moment.
Yeah. I'm having a go.
It's much better if we're all reading from the same
Can you see that?
Oh, we got ahead of me.
Right, that's my page 81 with my notes on, because I wanted to make a change to number 2.
Right. Okay, so looking down that then, which bit are you talking about?
Sorry, I'm whizzing about. Let me just go down a bit slower.
Okay, so it's recommendation 2.
Yep.
On that page.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Right, guess
can
what
you
you've written
read
there?
again what you wanted to include then, so we're all back on track?
Okay. The executive advised local care homes to review risk assessments and ensure, for the duration of the pandemic, staff do not work in more than one care setting, and ensure appropriate social distancing for young people who work in or visit their homes.
And that's actually where I want to make a change. Why only young people?
Now let's deal with one thing at a time.
Yes.
Can you say that bit again, Andrew?
Okay, so after ensure, ensure for the duration of the pandemic, staff do not work in more than one care setting.
Well, we can't actually tell them that, so can we include, we would advise that staff?
It says advise, the executive advise,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Alison, did you want to talk about that again?
Well, I think the Public Health England have advised care homes that people do not move between settings. So I don't think we can trump their advice, can we?
Well, it all reinforces it, in my view. Prue, what did you want to say about
the word young people? I mean, obviously, I haven't been involved in this earlier. I don't understand why it's only young people you want to advise about appropriate social distancing. What about everybody? Shouldn't everybody who works in or visits their homes be advised?
I think Andrew's amendment removes that.
Andrew, would you like to come back on that?
No, it doesn't, and I do agree with Prue. The reason why I think young was included was particular concerns about students working in more than one care home.
Yeah,
but I do agree with Prue.
I think it's discriminatory.
Yes.
It is.
And I thought we'd raised this and discussed this at the last meeting, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Are you happy to take that word out, Andrew?
Yes.
Okay.
Chairman, if I can just assist, at the last meeting in October.
Hang on, one at a time, please. The hands that are up, Paul's and Alison. So can we go to Paul?
Chair, that's Neil that was asking. It's the officer.
I beg your pardon, Neil. I always give way to Neil. Carry on.
Just to clarify, at the meeting in October, we had Meriden Peachy, the public health consultant, with us.
Yeah.
And she was asked the question, is there anything specific around what's currently happening? And her advice was around young people. That's where we got the recommendation from.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So what about if we put in including students or including young people? Broaden it out that way.
I don't think we should.
No.
I think, any recommendation applies to people of any age, doesn't it?
Yeah, okay, I agree. Yeah. Right. Anyone else want to speak before I ask Neil if he could read out the whole of number 2, please? If he's managed to make sense.
Can I stop sharing my screen?
No, keep it up for a moment.
Right, okay.
Right, Neil, what does number 2 now say?
So, number 2, the executive advised local care homes to review risk assessments and ensure, for the duration of the pandemic, that staff do not work in more than one setting and appropriate social distancing for people who work in or visit their homes.
That makes sense to me. Is that okay with you, Andrew?
Yes. Yes.
Right. Can I see those in favour of that amendment then to that recommendation? If you'd like to put up your hands.
On screen sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Prue. That was really helpful.
Right, I'll stop now.
Thanks.
I had one other, if that's okay.
Yeah, can we just deal with this one first?
Sure.
We need to vote on it. I'm not sure that we've got a majority there.
Oh, sorry, I hadn't raised my hand.
Okay.
Now we do.
I don't know if you can see my hand, Pauline, but it is. I have used it, but it may not be working.
It's up.
I can't see it, Emma.
I can see it, Emma.
Oh yes, I can. It is there. It is there. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in favour. Okay, could I see those against then, please? And take your hands down. Have all the hands come down? Right, so that's 3 against. Not right, Neil? Oh no, it's changed. 2 against. That's Jim and Andy, is that right?
Yes, Chair. And the reason I'm against it is the fact that there are certain skill sets within the care community where some people have to go to more than one care home, and I'm particularly talking about either a GP or a first responder, etc., which could be classed as staff. So where appropriate, I totally agree with the motion, but there are occasions when that will be impractical.
I'll take that point. Those two hands down then, please. Are there any abstentions? Put those two hands down.
I have to say that having heard Jim's comment, I would have been happy to further amend that before we move to a vote.
Okay, it's a little bit unorthodox, but never mind. Carry on and say what you wanted to. What would you like to put?
Yeah.
Well, I would bow to Jim's experience of this because I hadn't taken on board at all the point that he made, but it seems very valid. So, Jim, is there a way that you would amend that recommendation so you would be able to vote in favour of it?
The only thing I can add is unless there's specific skill sets that are required across multiple care homes, and there will be things like district nurses and GPs that have to go to more than one care home.
So unless there are people with specific skills that are needed across care homes.
Yeah.
Full stop.
I think if I recall the conversation,
I was too slow. I should have got in earlier.
Right, I know we've already voted, but I'm quite happy to bend the rules a little bit to get it right. Anyone else want to say anything about that?
I just want to say that the whole idea of telling care homes who've spent the last 6 months...
Advising care homes, not telling
Sorry,
them.
of advising, it's even worse than the whole idea of that we can offer advice to care homes on social distancing 6 months into their managing, longer, 9 months into whatever it is, into them managing it's just absurd, and it's a bit embarrassing. I think the original point of this, I think this came out of a conversation where we'd sort of realised that it was people or travelling between care homes were the issue. So the whole social distancing thing is a little bit of a red herring.
Well, I suppose if you're caring for an elderly person, you can't socially distance from them, can you?
Well, it's just a care home's a care home. You've got to do what has to be done, and social distancing, it's that sort of first level thing, isn't it? It's what you do when you're walking down the street or you're in Tesco. It's not what you're doing in a care. I just don't. I think it makes us look a little bit ridiculous. I think the point
more
of
comments on that.
The point of moving between care homes is valid. Social distancing is embarrassing.
I think Alison,
Yes,
I
think that the point needs to be made that it's care home staff, because I don't believe that any care home employs their own GP. So it's care home staff who should not be working in more than one setting, and perhaps drop the bit about social distancing, because from what I've gathered, care home staff have become experts in the use of PPE, distancing, barrier nursing, etc., etc. So I think simply the recommendation is that care home staff should not be working in more than one setting, and that's it.
Sorry, I'm going to can I disagree, please?
Before
Andy just
I
have my hand up.
The people with their hands up are Prue, Alison, Andrew, and Andy, in that order.
Thank you. I mean, I'm going to disagree. I'm not disagreeing that care homes don't know what they're doing. I think they do probably, but actually the council does have a role in this, because it's the council that's responsible for public health. The council should issue as much advice as it possibly can to people, including the visitors to care homes, which is included in that. And if it wasn't for this council giving advice and making a stand on care homes quite early on, the situation in our care homes would have been an awful lot worse. So I actually support this as it is.
Okay, Andrew?
I was just going to say basically what Prue has said. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Andy?
I just wanted to clarify. I think it's a question of agency staff moving between care homes. I think that was the issue, rather than staff employed by care homes. It's a small point.
Right, Jim.
Just to clarify, it's not so much GPs, but care homes will employ people who are authorised to issue medications, and that's quite an expensive skill, so they will share those across more than one care home.
Let's go with what Jim originally said. if Andrew's happy with that.
Yep.
And if you don't like it, you can vote against it. Andrew, could you read the motion out now as it stands?
Could Jim read that?
Not Andrew, Neil, I beg your pardon.
The recommendation.
Yeah, with the amendments.
I was hoping somebody else was going to do that, Chairman. Can Jim just tell us the words he was thinking of?
Andrew, can you do it?
Could Jim do it? I'm sorry for passing the buck, but he did read it out before.
Yep. Okay. Can you do that, Jim?
So do you want to put up can somebody screen share the original one for me again? And I'll just add the words to it.
Yeah. So if we add your words, then Neil's got the original amendment. So if we then add in Jim's.
Where are we?
Where would you put that, Jim, and what would you say?
Sorry, I'm just trying to find it again. My eyesight's not that good.
It's up on the screen.
Number 2, Jim.
So the executive advised local care homes to review risk assessments and ensure appropriate social distances for people who work and visit their homes. That's not.
Jim, could you just clarify the words you wanted to insert about people with specific skills?
The words I want to insert, Neil, were with the exception where specific skill sets are required to work across more than one care home. And if you want an example for that, that would be the people that are unable to prescribe and issue medication.
Yeah. Andy, you've got your hand up. I'll just take you and then I'll ask Neil if he could read out the whole sentence. Oh, hands down. Okay.
I've lowered my hand. I'm still trying to get my head around Jim's comment.
Do you want to explain again, Jim? I think the point is that there are some people who have to travel between homes if they've got particular skills, like doctors, for example. Is that what you meant, Jim?
Yeah, it's as somebody rightly pointed out, it's not so much GPs, but it's where the care homes employ people who can prescribe and issue medications. They are normally shared across more than one care home.
Mm. That makes sense, Andy. Okay, then let us ask Neil if he can now untangle the whole lot and give us a sentence.
Okay, here we go. The executive advised local care homes to review risk assessments and ensure for the duration of the pandemic that staff do not work in more than one setting, with the exception of specific skill sets such as prescribing and issuing medication. Then do you want to stop there, or then do you want to go on to the bit about appropriate social distancing?
What do you want? Do you want to include that, people?
Yes.
No, it's just
It should
it's
be, to be
stating
honest.
the obvious and it's embarrassing.
Yes.
Well, because that includes visitors as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, let's include it, and if you don't like it, vote against it. So, if Andrew's happy with those words as the proposer,
Yes.
okay. Well, I'm happy to go along with that as a seconder. So, can we now finally move to a vote on that particular wording? Those in favour, put your hands up, please.
Kate, Jan?
For some,
We have all those
there we are.
hands down. Two hands to go down.
I'm trying to lower it. I'm trying to lower it. There he goes, finally.
It's now gone back up again, Rochelle. Hang on a moment.
And Andrews is up.
Mine won't go down. Sorry. Oh, cracky.
Right, it's gone down.
I just manually did it.
Oh, well done. Okay. Right, and those against, please raise your hands.
1, Chairman.
And those abstaining, Andy, can you put your hand down, please? Thank you. Those abstaining.
One, Chairman.
Right, there's some people not voted then. Well, that's
Did you get
all right.
my hand up? Because I voted for. I don't know if you got my hand up.
Yeah, I think we counted you, Emma.
Okay.
Anyway,
It's carried, Chairman.
It is passed, so by quite a big majority. So we'll include that in the recommendations. Andrew, was that the only one you wanted to raise? You're muted. You're muted. Can you take your microphone off?
There we go.
Right.
Yes, sorry. Yes, it's item 4, and I hope this will be much less controversial. It says,
is this the one about domestic violence?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And what I would propose is at the end we add the need for explicit recognition and action in response to reported levels of domestic violence and abuse during the pandemic. Response to reported rising levels, sorry.
In response to the rising levels of domestic abuse during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Is there a seconder for that? Rochelle? Okay. Anyone want to make any comment on that? Rochelle?
No, not particularly. I
No.
think everything, he's pretty much covered it.
Okay. Any other comments? Then maybe move directly to a vote then. Those in favour of that amendment, please raise your hands.
Eight, Chairman.
Rochelle, did you mean your hand not to go up?
It keeps going up and down every so often, just
So
on its own.
you're voting in favour?
Yeah.
9 now, Chairman.
That's 9. That's great. Thank you. Anyone against, please?
It won't lower.
No, not against.
It's down. Oh, now it's back up again.
Rochelle's is up, but we know.
No, it seems to be doing its own thing. Actually,
It must have a button lag or something like that. That's weird.
So, please don't vote twice. Don't want to go through that.
I've got 4 hands that keep going up and down. So if you're against, could you call out your name? Okay, none against. If you're abstaining, can you call out your name? Right, that's passed unanimously. And thank you, Andrew. Was that all?
Yes.
I have a query on one of the recommendations, if you don't mind, Chairman.
Sure.
It's number 8, and I think it's probably because I haven't been here before. I don't understand it. What does it mean? Number 8. It says the council limit the use of comparative data and benchmarking narrative, such as being ranked the least deprived upper tier authority.
Yeah, it was raised by Sarah Kerr. Who was worried that what was it she was worried about?
It was it was basically using data and terms in I'm trying to think of the right word, but not in positive ways effectively. So it's basically preventing demeaning of residents effectively is the best way I can think about it right now on a couple of hours sleep and approaching 10 o'clock at night.
Insulting residents, in other words, not insulting residents. That's the whole idea.
Now you said that, I understand the intent of it. The wording doesn't really express that. So it's more about why doesn't it say something like the council does not belittle residents when making use of comparative data and benchmarking narratives such as, and I don't know, something like it
sounds fantastic, Prue.
I think that sounds quite insulting that there's an assumption the council would do that.
Yes, but it doesn't. The wording that's there, I could not understand what it was there for. So if I can't understand it, then nobody else is going to understand it who hasn't been involved with this, are they? That's my point, really. Is there a way to make that clearer? What is the intention?
Yeah,
or is it to not to minimise the difficulties faced by residents? Or is that the kind of thrust of it?
What she was
Can I
worried
suggest
about
an amendment?
Us being called the least deprived upper tier authority. Because she felt that wasn't accurate.
Could I suggest an amendment?
Overall it is, but there are pockets that are deprived. That was the intent.
Yes, I understand the intent, I think. Alison's got a proposal, I think.
Okay.
I would propose the recommendation is that the council recognises there is no place for poverty in this borough, and we should strive to do everything we can to push up living standards and drive out poverty for every resident in this borough.
Yes.
So that even if we've only got 5 residents in poverty, we should still be doing everything we can to increase their living standards.
That's quite a change, but I think it does make the idea a little bit better.
Yes, that makes sense to me, and I think it probably does address the issue that Sarah would have been raising. Thank you.
Yeah, I second Alison's proposal there. It's basically getting rid of, for the lack of better description, the technocrat language here.
Andy?
Yeah, just say I didn't read Sarah's proposal as being something to do with, if you like, the dignity of residents. I thought it was about using comparatives which would be misleading. So the example given there is that, for example, if you're talking about poverty in the borough, you don't then say, but we are the wealthiest borough in the country. You just avoid that sort of juxtaposition. So I didn't, and I think the reason that was given from memory was that the way the statistics and language was used sort of diminished the diminished poverty, if you like, and that was the intent of this. And what Alison is suggesting is something totally different.
Right. Would you like to add in a few words of amendment to what Alison said to include that idea?
No, I wouldn't, because I think
you set yourself up for it.
I think Alison's totally changes the meaning of what is there. It doesn't say the same thing at all.
It could include both, couldn't it? If you had an amendment.
It could, but I don't think that would fix Prue's problem, which is Prue doesn't understand what the text says.
In English.
Yeah, I mean, can I say, I think probably we're all in agreement that nobody fully understands what on earth it means. I mean, it's got to change because we need clear English that every resident can understand.
Yes, absolutely right. Yeah.
I mean, I do remember, I think Andrew spoke to this last time, if I remember. I don't know if Andrew's got any thoughts on this. I didn't, because it was a bit too technical for me, I've got to admit. And I think someone who'd done the research and it had a distinct advantage over someone who hadn't. But Andrew, did you not talk on this last time when we discussed this? I'm sure you made a contribution.
I think I did, but I'm at a bit of a disadvantage at the moment because I actually can't get to I don't know how to sort of split my screen and go back to the document that we're talking about. But I think actually Andy is correct in Sarah's intent here, and it's not to use baseline data in any way that could be misleading of not just issues relating to poverty, but it could be in any context. So in other words, to recognize circumstances as they pertain to our residents in their own right, Yeah. Now, the baseline data can be important, but not to use that as a reference point in a way that could diminish, the importance, of the matters that they face.
So what about if looking at Alison's amendment, which I think is a good one, that we put in that the authority or the council do not use comparative data and benchmarking in a way that would diminish any of its residents, and then go on to Alison's bit.
Can I have another go at explaining it? So
Yep.
where it says the council limit the use of comparative data and benchmarking narrative. Okay, so such as being ranked the least deprived upper tier authority when talking about poverty. That's actually really clear. That means we don't compare ourselves to other authorities.
We can make two motions out of it if you want to separate it. Add Alison's.
Perhaps you can put Alison's in as an extra recommendation.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. But we still need to sort the wording out for this one.
Chair.
Do you want to recommend something, Guy?
Thank you. I just wanted to. I'm just sitting here thinking of Alison's one and changing it, but it could be something as simple as putting in at the end of what Alison says, and to limit the use of generalized data within our communications, or something along those lines, so that we effectively are getting rid of the technocratic jargon, as it were. And it's also, as Andy quite rightly pointed out, the use of we are things like the least deprived borough in the country, for example. From that, and it's basically getting rid of those generalized terms, as it were. I mean, there's some aspects that we have to use, but I think it's just getting rid of that aspect. Is that something more akin to what you're thinking on that, Andy?
Would that help, Andy?
No, because I don't think it's the generalized terms. It's the comparisons.
Yeah.
It's the comparison of us with, say, Slough, or us with Tyneside or somewhere like that, and saying, well, actually, it's not so bad really, because there's only 20% of people in poverty. Or
in that case, it's
hang on, one at a time. But you finished, Andy?
I have finished. So
well, you haven't,
yes.
because I was going to suggest that you came up with some words.
Well, I was going to suggest and to limit the use of comparative data. Then, apologies, Andy. My brain's not working. I was doing generalised and comparative at the same time.
Go on then.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yep.
Go on. To replace it with, when the council communicates about poverty in the borough, it avoids using statistics in a way that minimises the difficulties faced by residents.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Is that covering it doesn't? Go on, Andy. Why not?
Sounds great.
I would say, I think this could be made clearer by taking about the last clause. So the council limit the use of comparative data and benchmarking narratives, such as being ranked as the least deprived upper tier authority when talking about poverty, full stop.
No, but then that prevents you actually mentioning things when they are relevant.
When is poverty somewhere else ever relevant to us?
Well, it would depend on. They have. Newcastle has improved the circumstances of their poorest 5% better than we have. That would be a valid thing where you say that's not good enough for us. Yes.
So it sounds like we all understand it, to be honest.
Well,
Alison, your hands up.
Well, in a way, I feel that if poverty is relative, and that is one of the ways of measuring it, then obviously with incomes and living standards generally in our borough being higher than most other places in the country, then there are people who are living in poverty. It is measured differently. So it is perhaps more difficult for us to be helping raise standards because there's a greater span to do that.
Can I have a slightly?
But I think I might be going off the point here and starting to just discuss
Can I
it
have
rather
one
than
more
the
stab?
recommendation.
One at a time. Is Alison still speaking? Would you finish?
No, that's fine. I've got a feeling that Sarah might have suggested this very late in the evening.
Yes.
One more stab at it, Pauline. That when
Paul's got his hand up, so let him have a say. Then we'll come back to you, Drew, for some
Thank you.
words.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with that, what Andy's saying. I think those first two lines are correct. It's what comes after that is the bit which I think we are struggling with. And maybe if Prue, in her wording, could just add something to that, I think we may well be all satisfied.
That's what I was going to suggest now. So if we take the first two lines, so that it says the council limit the use of comparative data and benchmarking narrative, such as being ranked the least deprived upper tier authority when talking about poverty, and then replace the rest to say to avoid minimising the difficulties faced by residents.
Yeah, I like that. Is there a seconder for that? If we make that proposal,
I'll second that. I'm happy with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think we've discussed the words enough. We could go on all night with semantics, but I think it's now clear what we mean. So can we move to a vote on it then, please? Those in favour of Prue's motion, before we vote, would Neil kindly read it out again?
Okay, the council limit the use of comparative data and benchmarking narrative, such as being ranked the least deprived upper tier authority when talking about poverty, to avoid minimising the difficulties faced by residents.
Yeah, thank you. Okay then, those in favour, hands up.
Yeah.
That's 11, Chairman.
Yep. 11, that's right.
Yay.
I thought there were 12 of us here. Oh, Prue's hand's not up. But you proposed it, Prue. Ah, it is now.
Is Abdul still on the phone? Does he need to vote verbally?
Ah, that's a point. Abdul? Abdul, are you there?
He's disappeared in the list, Chair. I think we might have lost him on the phone line.
Probably have. But we don't need his vote in the kindest possible way. So I think that's a unanimous agreement. Right, is that all on those recommendations? Has anybody got anything else? I would quite like to add something in relation to the survey, which I thought was very helpful, a very useful survey. I've now lost what I wanted to say. Sorry about that, too many bits of paper. It was along the lines of noting that the residents have 96% of residents, wasn't it, were either had no view or were happy or satisfied or more than satisfied with what the council is doing re-COVID, and they had 3 things that they wanted us to work on, and I have now lost where I wrote it. Here we are. Yeah. So what I was going to suggest we add in that we note that 96% of residents either had no opinion or found the borough's response to COVID satisfactory or very satisfactory, but that for the future, their most important concerns are supporting local businesses and employment, support for mental health, and reducing isolation and loneliness for older people. because I thought that might give a steer to the executive on the things that they need to concentrate on. What about that idea before I make it into a formal proposal? Any agreement with that? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
shall I word that a little bit more succinctly then? We note that 96% in a resident survey were either satisfied or very satisfied or had no view about the council's response to COVID. Saying it slowly so Neil can write it down. And we note that their most important issues for the future are supporting local business and employment, support for mental health, and reducing isolation and loneliness for older people. You got that, Neil?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. Is there anyone who would be willing to second that?
I will.
Okay, thank you. So could you put your hand up if you're in agreement of us adding that in as the last recommendation?
Ten, Chairman.
Lovely. So that's none against, is it? Can you put your hands down? I'll just check whether anybody's against. Right, is anyone against? Okay.
I was trying to vote for, but my hand wouldn't go up.
That's 11 then, Chairman.
Okay. Sorry, I temporarily left. I don't know why, but I'm back now. So that was carried. Okay. So that's our recommendations to the executive then, and thank you very much. I'm sorry about the rather unorthodox discussion, but I think it was important that we got to the right words because people have got to understand what we said. So back to formality now then. Okay, on to the next item, which is the Executive Forward Programme, item 59. I think, as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing to comment on this. Does anybody want to say anything? So we just agree it as it is. Okay, then moving on to the committee work programme, item 60. Anyone want to comment?
Just to say that the children's services one hasn't been updated.
Right.
Well, for a start, it repeats itself. We're only looking at the SEND strategy once.
Oh, yeah.
And also, since we don't have any Ofsted reports or school performance indicators, they've been removed from the agenda in January.
Right, so...
And I believe we had added I think we're looking, we will be looking at home education.
Yeah.
I think that might be in March.
Right.
But yes, so we don't have any school performance or Ofsted reports. Unlikely to have those for many more months.
No, okay. Have you got that, Neil?
Neil, I'll ask
Yes,
Lucianne
thanks.
to send you the updated
Yeah, that's
plan.
right. Okay.
Can I just add a couple of points, Chairman?
Yes, Neil, please do.
At the meeting in October, the minutes reflect 2 potential additional items for the Management Committee.
Okay.
One was on the proposed co-produced anti-poverty strategy.
Right.
And the second was on partnership working with charities. It was agreed the committee would discuss those tonight.
Right, we haven't had it on the agenda.
No, discuss adding them into the work programme.
Oh, okay, right, yes. Yeah, indeed. If we need to do that, we'll do that. And wasn't there something about council tax that probably should go to the C&C committee?
Chair, that is on the agenda for the 22nd of December, we will be considering it that evening. So that is already booked in from Community and Corporate. Also, an additional note to members here, we also have got a election update from Andrew Moulton coming at that same meeting. Basically, the progress and planning for how the elections and the counts, etc., will be conducted next year, providing things don't go down the plug hole again. And then in January, we've just got the audit shared services, which was due to come to Monday's meeting, but was delayed due to staff being redeployed again for the lockdown previously. And of course, we got the budget continually going on Community and Corporate at the moment. And that's it.
Lovely, thank you very much, Guy. So if nobody's got anything else to say, then that will be the forward programme.
Sorry, Chair. Another item, we are inviting Public Health England to come to Children's Services because at the last meeting we had Berkshire West CCG talking about mental health support, and they weren't able to give us the data information that we wanted to be able to, look further into self-harm.
Right.
And some of the other issues about young people. So we have issued an invitation for them to come to our January meeting.
To the January meeting, fine. Okay. Anyone got any other comments? Otherwise,
yes. May I pick up on the comment that Neil made? If I understood him correctly, there are 2 items that he said should be considered or might be considered to go into the forward plan for overview and scrutiny management. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. So that's effective partnership working.
It was partnership working with charities.
Yep.
And being involved in the co-produced anti-poverty strategy. It's on page 14 in the minutes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Andrew. All clear. Right, in which case I declare that there are no further items which the Chairman decides are urgent, and can I thank you all very much indeed for your contributions, including the rather less formal bits, but I think it was important we teased that out and got the right wording. So thanks ever so much for all of your contributions this evening, and have a good what's left of the evening. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Good night, all.
Good night, everybody. Good night.